Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are at the last session of InsureTalk for 2022. And what a year it's been. We have been through the worst of it as an industry, and I'm not going to repeat everything that's gone wrong because we hear enough about that at all the events that we attend. But today is a special day because we have a really special sponsor back at InsureTalk. Santam Insurance is our headline sponsor for the day. And Santam has been involved and a very important part of InsureTalk since day one, since the first edition in lockdown of 2020. Now, something about Santam that I want to discuss a bit today in a bit more detail. Santam is the leader in our industry, and they act like the leaders. And one of the reasons why I say that is because of the investment they make in their people, not just within Santam, but within the industry as a whole. And hence one of the reasons why they are involved with InsureTalk. I am privileged to say that my first job was at Santam here in Cape Town. And it set me up for my career because of the incredible amount of time and effort that goes into training and developing the people at Santam. And this is 30 years ago. So Santam, we want to thank you for your continuous involvement in uplifting the industry as a whole. And for supporting this wonderful program and initiative that is InsureTalk. So onto our speaker lineup for today, we have a panel of expert speakers, mostly from the team at SHA. And first up is Manisha Shiman. She is the Business Head of Liability and Professional Indemnity at SHA. And it's a great talk to open the day with because she's going to talk to us about understanding and unpacking product recall and factors to consider for risk management. I want to just mention and explain to you a little bit about Manisha. Manisha is, as I said, she's the Business Head of Liability and PI at SHA Risk Specialists. She's worked in the insurance industry since 2011, and she joined SHA as Manager of Commercial Liability Underwriting in 2016, and she managed a team of skilled underwriters until her recent promotion to her current position. So Manisha, congratulations on that promotion. I saw the press release on it, and it just makes me so happy to see women succeed in our industry. Manisha holds a Bachelor of Commerce, a Commerce Honours in Insurance and Risk Management from the University of Witwatersrand. She's passionate about our industry, and she considers herself a student of insurance, so she never stops learning. So on that note, I'm going to hand you over to Manisha. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So today I have a wonderful opportunity to really unpack and understand product recall in our space and really the factors that we as underwriters, but we also believe that brokers and clients can look at as part of their risk management. To kick us off, I'm just going to take you through a little bit of background of what we're seeing in our market recently. So over the past 24 to 36 months, we've seen a steady stream of notifications around product recall and the recalls that have been intimated. Some of this has ranged from apple cider and apple juice to also frozen foods, canned vegetables, as well as chocolates. And most recently, some of you would have noticed that dry shampoo has also been called off the shelves. In 2021 alone, we saw one of our largest food and beverage manufacturers initiate a recall that took over 20 million cans of food off the shelves in a very organized manner. And we found that consumers were able to basically go and swap their cans or get vouchers, essentially. We've also seen in our space the automotive industry have a number of recalls. Now, this has been an ongoing trend. It's nothing that we're unused to. But if we really think about it in recent times, and I know for a fact, as recent as 12 months ago, I was called into my dealership to have a look at a part that was potentially recalled. So that's pretty much a norm. But we're now starting to see the trend also in the technology space, such as Fitbit being recalled as well. So we're seeing the spike in recalls, and it's always been there internationally. But what's driving our South African markets to see the spike? For us, we believe it's the enactment of the Consumer Protection Act. It really highlights an awareness around consumers, around the safety of products and what their rights are, as well as the reputational risk. And this is sort of expedited by social media awareness. How often are you on Facebook, Twitter, or even Instagram? And you'll note in the comment section that people often comment whether a product is worked well for them, alternatively, the adverse effects of a product. And that can really spiral out. So how do we unpack product recall? One of the things I want us to talk about really is around product liability before we embark on products recall. So product liability is really where a section of cover under a broad form liability policy, where an insured is covered against third-party claims for either injury or damage as a consequence of the nature or condition of a product that they have supplied, manufactured, or distributed to the public. In this event, it's basically the injury or the damage has occurred already, and as such, it's covered under this section of the policy. One of the things one should note, though, is that products recall is a specific exclusion under product liability. And as such, products recall needs to be purchased separately via a separate policy, alternatively an extension to a broad form liability policy and underwritten on that basis. To delve into a little bit of products recall, I really want to go through what is a product recall. And this is not what the policy is covering, but really the overall process flow of a product recall. So it's really a formal response to retrieving a defective or potential harmful product that may reach the consumers or has reached the consumers. This can be done voluntarily by the client themselves as the manufacturer. Alternatively, it can be mandated by the regulatory authority. In our case, the National Consumer Commissioner would actually instigate a recall in this instance. One such recall that was highly publicized in our space actually stemmed around the late 2017 and early 2018 was the listeriosis event that was highly publicized. And we saw the National Consumer Commissioner come out early 2018 and instigate this recall across all major retailers for a number of manufacturers. A common mistake that people often make, though, is to dismiss a product recall threat as something that really sits with the retailer or the manufacturer. If we look at instances of our Act, we can see that one can be severally and jointly liable for products liability claims. And so recall also forms part of that in our mind. Now, why I say that is because while a retailer might instigate a recall, one must consider that manufacturers don't always see the end-to-end process. A manufacturer will source their raw materials from a different supplier. Alternatively, they might even outsource their packaging. And a very good example of recall by a packaging company would be where the packaging company's packaging potentially leaches into the product. So for example, in metal cans or plastic, you might see leaching into the product, which then contaminates the product. Now, when the manufacturer manufactured that product, there was nothing wrong with it. Where it went wrong was in the packaging phase, and subsequently it reaches end consumer. The cost of a recall could fall on any contributor of the supply chain. So it's important that every person within a supply chain really understand this. And while I'm talking food and beverage and highlighting food and beverage, as we've seen a number of these incidences as recent as a month ago, I think it's important to understand that recall is not limited to food and beverage, and it really can go into your space depending on the type of components you are manufacturing or products you are manufacturing. So let's unpack a little bit here about who needs this type of cover. So in our space, we do believe if you are producing consumables, food and beverage, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, clothing, appliances and parts, etc., basically you're vulnerable to the possible contamination of your product. I think when I say this, I think most people are probably having a moment where they're going, clothes. That's very interesting. Why would clothes be highlighted as a potential recall? It's important to understand that when fabrics are not treated properly, potentially they could cause abrasions on skin, especially with children. Alternatively, if pins or any sort of threads that could cause sort of injury to kids or adults that can also be recalled as part of clothes. And we're seeing a number of those in the European market. One can go onto various websites within the EU. For example, if I went onto the Rapid Alert system for food and feed, I can pick up all the notifications in the EU that goes back year on year. Just an indicator of something that I just recently had a look at this week is that from 1 January up until the 20th of November, the EU basically issued over 3,800 notifications for potential issues around food and beverage. Now, this also included salmonella, it included histamines in tuna, but it also included things like the mislabeling of a product. And when I say mislabeling, I mean that we did not note that there's potentially nuts in a product. And a lot of people have become allergic to such sort of consumables. So it's important that these alerts and notifications go out to the public. What can help us though is how do we detect this? So what we're seeing is we have this notification system in Europe, and that allows for all the countries to have proper communication and see whether or not that product has been imported within their country. It is important as us as South Africans that we see the advancement of technology to make it possible to detect and identify potential triggers of incidences of product recall. Now, advances in technologies can be something as simple as creating a proper magnetic system within your production flow to ensure no metal is actually going into your product. So it will pick up metal filings, for example, if you are in a canning business. And so that allows for innovation within the industry as well. Harmful and defective products basically attract a lot of media attention. And we've talked about social media as being an indicator, but also from a news perspective, we're seeing more and more often that the media is actually coming to alert on these sort of recalls or incidences, and it really gets, expedited. And how you manage that with the media is absolutely critical. For us, I think you have to look at the media as a form of actually communication and getting your message out there. And they help in a way to manage the reputational risk of our clients, as well as, the clients themselves, using them as sort of more an ally instead of a foe. If you mismanage this, what you can have is an impact on the public confidence within not just your product, but you as a manufacturer as well. And often you'll hear people then say, I will not buy from that company. Alternatively, they'll post negative reviews, even on Hello Peter, and it sort of spreads into a much more a cult following almost. Expensive costs are usually incurred in a recall. So I think we must not actually, when people say, what limit do I need in recall? It's very hard as an underwriter to always tell you, well, these are the limits. We usually tell you, buy as much as you can afford. Our experience has shown that even if you took a 50 million limit, your recall cost can exceed 300 to 400 million. And how do you measure those costs is essential. And we're going to talk about some of those factors that will drive your purchasing of recall cover, as well as the investment you would need to make as a client in terms of protecting your reputation as well as your brand. So what is the purpose here? The purpose of the section of recall of the product is, you want to recall a product that has a potential. So I'm not saying that it's already caused. It might have caused it already, but it has the potential to cause injury or damage to the public. Now, how does one pick up a potential? This could be through batch testing of your product. Alternatively, you might have received complaints on your consumer line. In most instances on the consumer line, you will find they'll phone the retailers. And if you've indicated on your product that this is your consumer line, sometimes they'll phone you directly as the client. To delve into a little bit on the policy side of this. So what does a policy cover? And I really am talking from SHA's perspective here of what our recall policy or recall section would cover. The purpose of our section is to cover 3 triggers really. The first being the first party trigger, and this is where our insured, the client themselves, they go through batch testing and they realize that potentially their product might be contaminated to the end consumer. They've already supplied their retailers, and so they might look to initiate a recall, and we call this a first party recall. We then have a secondary one, which is the third party recall section. So we've talked about the supply chain. In the supply chain, the retailer is really the end consumer. And so the end party, not the consumer, sorry. But if you look at a retailer, the retailer might get complaints to their store, alternatively to their hotline. And if they feel that the product is, there's a danger to the public, they may initiate the recall, and that will also trigger a third-party recall on your policy. The other alternative is what we talked about, the National Consumer Commissioner or the regulatory authorities. So this is where government really intervenes. In the space here, government might pick up and instruct the manufacturers to recall their product as well as the retailers. So government here again won't just leave it to the manufacturing company. They might actually look at the entire supply chain and ask everybody to ensure that the product is pulled for the safety of the public. These are the triggers of a policy. But what are the factors that really drive this? And these factors that I'm going to talk about now are really, they at the heart and soul of it, they actually help with reputational risk management, which is what we would consider the uninsurable part of a policy, right? You're not going to get cover for it under an insurance policy, but it has the effect of either making or breaking your brand in the long term. So the factors that we would consider are highly important is number one is supply chain management. Now, supply chain management can work two ways. It can be both upstream and downstream. For the purposes of today's conversation, we will delve into both. We then have product safety and quality. So this is everything from raw materials right up till the time the product reaches shelf. Financial analysis and macro influences. How does that affect the underwriting and what should you consider, as well as the recall capability of your business, traceability, and preparedness. So let's start with supply chain management. Fundamental factor to the end product's integrity. If you have got a product that's going into cold storage, how does that product reach the consumer? At what point? Who's responsible for cold storage temperatures, the transportation companies? All of that can be seen through a proper supply chain management. So what do we want to actually see as insurers here? Really, we want to see that you are using a reputable supplier of ingredients, raw products or raw materials to manufacture the end product. How often do you change your suppliers is also important, as well as the due diligence that is undertaken with your suppliers. So the management of this relationship with your supplier is absolutely critical, both contractually as well as just overall how often you see them and you negotiate with them. You really want, if you as a manufacturer are ensuring a minimum standard of quality, you want to ensure that your suppliers also maintain minimum standards, and that this is adhered to not just at the beginning of the year, but really throughout the relationship process. So what we would recommend here is really for you to look at the import patterns. Where's your raw material coming from? Which countries, and what are the quality standards within that country? Alternatively, even within our own. Is the supplier approval program? So there's the continuous vetting. And I think that's super important that, we usually see that take place from the onset, and then throughout the process, it kind of gets a little slack because they're already on the system. What you want to do is actually go in on a regular basis and ensure that your supplier is meeting the obligations that they have promised you. And then the contractual risk management. I think gone are the days that we did relationships purely on a handshake. Today, the contractual risk management is absolutely critical. Is it your contract you are signing, or is it alternatively the supplier's contract? You want to ensure that your relationship between yourself and your supplier is clearly stated, as well as where the legal liability falls in the event that the supplier is liable, as well as if you are altering the product in any form or shape. Moving on to that, we talked about next product safety and quality. Really, this is the vast majority of product defects, contamination, or errors that really cause the end product to be unsafe or occur during the manufacturing or production phase of the operation. Here, the underwriter will evaluate the insured's product safety and quality standards, ensure they're measured to the relevant industry standards. So now this is it's not one shoe fits all, but we are going to look at basically overall what is the purpose of your product and who's the end consumer of it, as well as your export patterns. The evaluation will consist of, but it's really not limited to, the relevant product safety certifications, analyzing the insured's quality management procedures, including the personnel. Do the people have the right qualifications to actually run your production line? Who's signing off the quality management system? And how often are you batch testing your product? And then we also look at where companies actually undertake independent audits. And in this space, we're really talking about third parties coming in that are reputable, and they measure your start to end process to ensure that you're meeting the minimum standards within your industry space. Financial integrity of a company is absolutely critical. We're looking at 3 to 5 years here, if not longer, if we can. The purpose of this is really to ensure that the company is growing and that there's more of a steady flow. Where we see anomalies is where a company grows extremely fast and the order book far outstrips maybe the number of individuals in the production line, the production facility size, and have they equipped themselves. So what we do find is that where a company has seen this spurt of growth and they have not kept up to the quality standards. So here now they have got this massive order book for a major retailer, but what they're missing is the same quality assurance because they need to ensure that they are producing at the rate required by the retailer. One can see claims come through in that instance or a lack of quality come through. The other factor, the contrasting side, is if you actually see a downturn on the financials and the production. So where production starts dropping, and in most instances, I mean, if we look at COVID alone, we saw companies take a little step back financially. And so you saw the cutting of individuals in this critical process. A very good example would be one of my favorite pizzerias in Johannesburg recently, well, not recently, more like 12 months ago. They are a pizzeria and a pasta company, and they decided because of the financial crisis, they were going to cut some of their staff. And so they cut the individual that used to make their pizza dough. It was a one-man show making the pizza dough. Needless to say, they had an influx of complaints around their pizza. People were not prepared to actually pay for their pizza due to the poor quality, and they happened to then have to outsource their pizza dough from another entity. The cost implications of that was tremendous. And more than that, they actually lost their consumers' vote of confidence. While it's a simple example, it demonstrates the need to ensure that you are looking at the right people on your quality chain. Okay, so the ability to instigate a recall is absolutely critical by having a proper plan, a predetermined plan. This particular plan should actually note a couple of critical points, and we're going to unpack them shortly. So recall management team appointed. What you want here is to have a clear flow and direction of who will handle a recall within your company. Now, this would also include senior management, your quality assurance, your transporters, everyone that is affected within your line. They should have a clear communication space. They should have a flow chart that actually demonstrates this, and that everyone should know in the event that a recall is going to be instituted, how the company would actually handle the recall. You want to also have a proper complaint management system. So we talked about food and beverage, and I mean, you really do see it on any product that they'll actually note that if you are not happy with your product, please contact our service team. This team is absolutely essential. What you need here is a well-trained team, people that can handle these calls with sensitivity and empathy and can actually take down the relevant details and ensure that they get back to the consumers. This particular team, it's not just for jokes, it's not just there to like, I've answered a call, but they form part of a critical process. And I think it's important that the individuals that do this understand and demonstrate that they're not just the call center of the company, but really they are there to understand if their potential product or their product has a potential risk to the consumers, and how do they then elevate that complaint to the relevant individual that are in the recall management team. Key contacts is absolutely critical. Now, key contacts is not just within your company. This could also go broader than your company in terms of your supply chain. So if it is found that a raw material potentially has the effect of harming the public, what you really do need to ensure is that you are contacting the right people in case that particular product is going into another product. For example, apple juice is the foundation of many products, including apple ties, as well as just normal apple juice. So when you go to the pulp manufacturer, you need to ensure that that person can notify the rest of their supply chain. Traceability is a critical factor, ensuring that you note the batch sizes, the batch dates, onto the product to ensure that you can actually demonstrate who received the product, which retailers, manufacturers, etc. You want to have a proper traceability plan, and you must have tested your traceability plan as well. Product reconciliation. For every batch that goes out, you should be able to account for it. You really do need to be able to reconcile your product, be able to store it in a safe place, ensure that you're able to test your products. And this would mean also accommodating for cold storage or normal storage. I think too often they don't find the space, and that can be a cost in itself. So it's absolutely essential that when you do get the product back, you're able to store it, test it, and if you do need to destroy it, that you have the proper protocols in place for that process. The recall procedure in itself. This is now, once the decision has been made to recall your product, how do you then take it to the end consumer? How do you message it? The communication behind it. These are all critical factors to ensuring a solid brand and reputational management process flow. So the recall procedure here needs to be absolutely airtight. It needs to be critically tested. And we're going to talk about mock recalls in a bit at the end of this presentation. And then the recall testing procedures. This is where we're going to talk about mock recall as well, is how you test your recall plans and your procedures. And what do you do with the test results thereafter? So exports. Very interesting one for us, because I think clients are finding this to be quite an interesting avenue. And what we are seeing is a lot of change in regulations globally. And when these change in regulations happen, potentially the product is not necessarily unfit for consumption. So there's no likelihood of injury or damage. It's just that those particular countries are changing the standard they want to work by, and therefore they might actually reject your shipment on the basis of unqualified acceptance. It's important to understand that unqualified acceptance would not be covered under a recall policy unless there's a likelihood of injury and damage. So when we talk to export patterns, if you're going beyond your borders, you really need to understand the legislation that is governing that particular country, the laws, the regulations, the food safety standards, or the product safety standards in that space. This is due to the fact that goods would have to be retrieved across borders and across continents, and that can have a cost effect overall on the cost of your recall. Now, a good example would be where you have small components, for example. So I have small components going to multiple countries in Europe. The cost of that recall might be more expensive than if it's going to one country alone. And furthermore, if it's only one large or unique piece of machinery that recall cover has been purchased for, one might need to bring in specialized machinery as well to actually retrieve that product. So that also has an effect. So you as the client and as the broker would need to understand the client's basically their business and where their product is going to. The nature of the product, we talked about this being whether it's a small component or a specialized component, and how the material impact it has on the cost. Local laws, again, if the laws are changing. So you really want someone within the business that understands the countries they are exporting to and what is the minimum requirements. For example, the war in Ukraine and Russia was not anticipated. What would be the effect on your policy? Those are things that one must actually question and understand the implications thereof. So what might be acceptable from a consumer perspective in South Africa might not be acceptable in a country like the EU. And this is where we say you need to have the expert in your company that actually unpacks this information and has a proper understanding of it. Contractual arrangements are just as essential. So if you're exporting off into a different country, you might find that the wholesaler within the country is responsible for initiating the recall. If they do so, do you have a third-party recall trigger on your policy that could be actually activated by them actually recalling within their territory? Those are all things that one needs to unpack. Again, the cost of a recall needs to be built in. And the reason I say this is because often and not, we talked about what limit do you need to purchase. So where the limit is required or where you need a minimum, and they usually contractually, if major retailers will say you need 10 million Rand or $10 million in some instances, what we have found is that the client does not actually bill for those costs, the insurance costs. into their contracts. And I think that's absolutely essential that they do. Are they able to bear those costs? Are they able to bear the deductibles on these sections? How have they managed this contractually? And what is their responsibility? If you are a small component manufacturer and your components are being modified, hypothetically, where does the risk lie for you? Do you have access to the policy? Will you be named on their policy, or do you need to name the manufacturer on yours? These are all things that need to be spoken about between yourself and broker to unpack your risk overall. So really, this is the big one. So the insured's ability to recall will determine the severity really of their risk in this space here. So the manner in which they actually undertake this recall is critical. A recall plan is really, it's a written plan. It's not in someone's head. It's not something that's airy-fairy and just a flow chart. It's actually a written plan that it shows and evaluates the risk from start to finish. So what you want to actually note is how you're actually going to start it, who's the people involved. So who's going to be the authorizer of such a recall, and who's going to determine that the product is harmful, how many tests do you go through, and how quick the decision-making process is actually undertaken. From the person initiating the recall, you need to have an assignment of roles and responsibilities. This can be anyone from a communications manager to the person responsible for transportation of the product, the storage of the product, the destruction of the product, and also then from a cost analysis perspective. You want to also ensure that you are adhering, if you've got a policy in place, that the conditions of the policy are being met and that you've kept your broker in the loop. So is your insurance or risk manager involved as part of this process is absolutely critical. How are you going to trace the product? So where would the trace details be on the product? And is it easily identifiable? I think we often see labels or printing on labels that is not very clear. You need to ensure that that is absolutely critical and that it's clear for consumers to actually pick this up, these details, and that they're notified immediately where they need to take their products and the time frame in which they need to operate. Details regarding any regulatory announcements that must be made to the public. So again, if you're going to trigger a recall, you really are the National Consumer Commissioner would also be involved, and you want to ensure that any regulatory announcements are also communicated to the public in a clear and concise manner, but also in a way that it's easy for them to understand. And this is where I'm talking about layman's language. Try and keep it simple, avoid too many technicalities, because you will then find that the public will not respond very well to that. And then you want to have the ultimate decision-making process. And this is generally displayed in a flow chart. So again, if people are on the floor in your business, we've seen examples where machinery breakdowns or machinery failure due to lack of servicing has actually resulted in products being contaminated. And so even the person that is servicing the machine or the person that is on the production line, you want them to be able to pick this up very quickly and actually come through and then notify the correct people to let them know that we potentially have a contamination. And then you also want to just have a proper, what's everyone's authorities and responsibility in this space. Communication plan, we've chatted about this briefly. So this is really about, who we're supplying to, the retailers, who's got the relationships, the product traceability, the emergency contacts. You want to ensure that that communication plan is absolutely clear. And the team that are running the recall, like they do with if there's a cyber event, if you're contacting consumers, you want to make sure that it's a clear team, that they know how to manage that absolutely properly. Okay, mock recall. So this is where you've done all the hard work of putting a plan together. You've maybe employed a risk management company to do so for you. The mock recall is where you're going to test it. And only you as a business can do this. You know the potential for your product to cause a potential contamination or potential injury. So you need to be able to put that into scenario-based testing. That scenario-based testing will also give you a cost analysis and should include a cost analysis to your business to unpack what the implication could be. You can then take that cost analysis and really unpack what is covered under your policy if you have a recall policy in place. Alternatively, what is also the uninsurable cost that you would need to budget for. So this is critical and should be undertaken on a yearly basis. Just highlighting a couple of critical points from an SHA perspective. we find that, when a recall is triggered, the potential for product liability is just as much there. And the reason being is usually when a recall is triggered, it's because someone has complained 9 out of 10. In that event, if someone has complained, you can also trigger a products liability section. In that space, what we have found is from 2019 to 2021, in a survey we undertook, we found the cost of product liability claims have gone up. And this is because litigation trends are indicating that people are claiming for larger quantums, as well as litigation costs overall going up. Furthermore, we also found that people, in terms of recall, did not necessarily budget for a recall, nor have they done the mock recall that they should be doing. So again, this is your cost-benefit analysis to do, and this is what really helps you manage your risk that is not covered under a policy. I think to close out today's conversation on this, the critical evaluating points is that while these are factors that we as underwriters look at, these are also talking points for a business, because this will shape your risk management strategy and how you manage your reputational risk overall. I think if you have questions as a business owner, as a broker, as an insurer, we should be sitting and talking about these things. At the end of the day, we need our consumers and our clients, and we need to ensure that we have a proper management system to ensure the safety of the products that go to our consumers. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, Manisha, thank you so much for that. One of the things that I enjoy so much about the InsureTalk virtual conference, because we come from you wherever, actually today we're coming from Cape Town, is the fact that we have speakers who speak from a place of knowledge and experience. And it's the best place to learn from. So we really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your expert skill and experience with the audience. Speaking of the audience, we have a record number of attendees. I know the registrations went over 3,300 already a couple of days ago. And InsureTalk has become somewhat of an institution in the South African insurance market. And I want to talk to you about sponsorships, because this is an incredible opportunity to get your brand out there. We have thousands of people signing in, and they sit and interact with your brand for a good 2 to 3 hours. You, as the mainline sponsor, would then be able to profile your people and show the market who you have in your organization. So I've heard from the organizers that we've got about 3 spots available for next year. So if you are interested to do a bit of investment in your brand and brand building, please make sure to contact us. And I know the guys will post the link in the chat and the email address where you should email if you want to make contact with us. I also want to make sure that I mention the following to you. The team behind InsureTalk is super organized. And why do I say that? Well, the registrations are open for 2023, all the sessions. The first session is in February, and what you do is you just go online and register for all of them. They'll remind you when the session is coming up, your CPD points are sorted, but not just because of CPD points. We're doing this because we want to grow together as an industry. So please go and register and join us on these sessions each month. So the next speaker is a man called Bart Wienink. He's from Action Coach Inspire. He is a motivational speaker and a leadership coach. And he's going to talk to us today on a very interesting topic. But before we get and hand over to Bart, I just wanted to give you a bit of insight into who Bart is and who we're dealing with. So he's already had 30 years, a successful career of 30 years in the FMCG industry with 3 companies. That's FMCG, for those of us who don't know, and I didn't know, means fast-moving consumer goods. He spent his time with 3 companies, Clover SA, McCain Foods South Africa, and Stamford Sales. He worked both at board and senior management level, and specifically as CEO, manufacturing director, and operations director. As a result, he's developed sound strategic management experience. And I think the focus is on strategic, because when it comes to moving consumer goods, you need to know exactly what you're on about. He's worked with most of the South African retailers and has a sound working knowledge of agro-processing, supply chain operations, sales and marketing, human resources, risk management, strategic planning, change management, and project management. This is a very well experienced individual, and he's going to share some of his insights with us today. Thank you, Bart. Over to you.
Thank you, Christelle, and thank you, Manisha. And Manisha, the whole talk that you did reminded me so much of my work in the FMCG side. We had a couple of claims in my history, and I can assure you that those systems you're talking about are extremely important in any food manufacturing business. But today is not about that. It's about client collaboration and the effect of that on your insurance practice. And allow me to just share with you where that takes us. So just a little bit about me. I help business owners and teams grow better businesses and make more money. And I think the emphasis is at the end to make money and to make sure the businesses are sound and that they stand their time and grow and become better and employ more people. So my background, very much into fast-moving consumer goods, but for the last 11 years, I've been a business coach with Action Coach, which is a franchise, and there's around 800 to 1,000 coaches currently worldwide in our system. And what I really want to do today is to show you how to make more money and really be more successful in running your business. And doing that with the understanding of what client collaboration is and the impact perhaps in your business. And I will demonstrate that in our 5 ways model to just show you what the impact could be if you just look at 5 areas in growing your business and getting more customers. So the first point that we're going to cover in the 5 key areas is what is customer collaboration. Also talk about the definition and purpose of business so we can actually understand why we're in business and what business is out there to do. How to build collaborative client relationships, very important to make sure that we do that. It's probably a lot cheaper than finding new clients. The most powerful profit-making formula on the planet that I spoke about before. And then what are the benefits of collaborating with clients and how do you use that in your business? So what is client collaboration? And after doing a bit of research on Google and in some of the textbooks that I have here, it's all about the action of working with clients to make something of benefit for both parties. All right, so the word action is important. And I believe that in collaboration, the word labor is there. To do the work, it means that you're actively working on something and doing the work, but it's also working together. There's a benefit for both parties. It's not a benefit for one only. And in this case, there's synergy because 1 + 1 is going to be more than 2 and probably 3 or 4. So what is customer collaboration then? It's how your business gathers and uses customer feedback to improve your overall customer experience. Well, just think about that. If your customer likes you so much that they keep on talking about you, they become your raving fans, isn't that one of the best ways to really market your business and make sure that you write more business in your practice? So customer collaboration then can be achieved in a number of different ways. And quite often we find that there is collaboration on social media. People talk about your business and so on, but you can quite often find some negatives too, where people complain about the service that they receive. And I think with collaboration, it now means that let's understand why they are complaining and how do we make their lives even better, and even use one of those incidents then to improve our business and make sure that we actually deal with that going forward. Know what forces attract and repel your customers to your business. So, what is it that they don't like? And if you can eliminate that and you can actually make that a positive so that it actually attracts them to come to your business, isn't that a much better way to be? Customer relationship management is really important in all of this. And I think the bigger businesses certainly have those CRM systems in place, but you need to also make sure that you have your CRM system, be that manual or whatever, in place to help you run your business. And here's an example that I came across that I think is almost the top end of collaboration. I'm not sure who knows about Business Network International, but that's a business organization that's now 37 years old. And they collaborate so much with the customers that the customers are actually running the business. And then they're paying to be members of that business. So what is customer collaboration? simply put, it's customer collaboration is the practice of listening to your customers and acting on their input to everyone's benefit. And there's a little thing in brackets that talks and an art. So it's a practice, but it's really, the key is to really understand and listen carefully to your clients and your customers. And then making sure that when you act, it's not a negative for them and not a negative for yourself, but it's a benefit for everyone. So our definition of a business, successful business, is really to have a commercial and profitable enterprise that works without you. Now we know that the big corporates don't have the problem here. There's so many people and they've got so many structures and things work, and one person doesn't make that big difference. But in the smaller practices and in smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses, the business owner quite often is the kingpin for the business. And the question is, how do you then grow your business to make sure that it can work without you? And what needs to happen? Because working in your business is one thing, and it's going to create the sale, but then you're also never going to be able to break and take some time away from the business and perhaps recharge or take a holiday or even sell the business if that is where you want to be. So the purpose of business, we believe, is to profitably create raving fans that create money for investment, and it's also about creating real wealth. So the question probably is, as an insurance broker, is how do I help my client, my customer, make money or protect that investment? What can I sell him? What can I do for him? And where can we put that money so it becomes something that is worth protecting and that creates real wealth outside of the business, so that one day there is some funds for the owner to take. So building collaborative client relationships. We talk about building with empathy. So really connecting with your client in a deep way, not just superficial, not just writing the contract and then not seeing them again in the next 6 months or 12 months. But build that relationship with empathy, because if you truly want a sustainable connection, you must apply that personal touch. And I've seen that in my life, and I think most of you who have perhaps seen family or members or friends that go through that. When do people become unhappy with their clients or their brokers? Is when they actually don't see them anymore. So make sure that you connect deeply with these people. How do you do that? Well, firstly, I think you need to prioritize the human interaction. You need to show more empathy. You need to show that you care. Well, how can you do that? Well, there's a couple of things, very practical stuff. And one of our coaches in KZN even gives people a birthday cake on their birthday. And guys, people talk about that. Your clients will talk about that, and people will want that. So what makes you stand out and what makes you different? Do you remember their birthdays? The birthdays of their kids, perhaps, even more emotional and more empathy required there. But then also celebrate their successes. So not only about knowing the family, but really be happy when they have successes in their business or in their life. You also need to prioritize and really make sure that the human interaction is genuine. Inspire the loyalty for the years to come. You want to build that trust in the business. You want to make sure that your client really trusts you as the advisor for him and his family and his business. So be professional. I think that's really important, but also be very authentic. Don't try and be somebody else. Be the person that you are, because that will attract people to you. You need to incorporate humor. You need to make it fun at times. It's not all about serious doom and gloom stuff. Yes, we're talking about insurance and risk cover and all those things, but how do you make that humor work for you? Be yourself. We spoke about that. Love and enjoy visiting your clients. Your personality sells your business. I think that's really important. You need to connect with people deeply, and they need to know that you care. I think it's also about being honest. Share your challenges with your clients. If you can't make things and do things on time, make sure you tell them. Life does happen. And you want to share your excitement and then perhaps also explain why things can't work that they wanted it to work. But there are moments that everyone needs to step away from work, and you need to make time for that, and you need to inform your clients of your unavailability. The word mysterious silence is probably one that you need to avoid as much as possible. You don't want your clients to wonder what's happened to you. We have a formula in coaching that we use. We say that anything you want in life that you want to have is because of what you do and who you are. So if you want to change your practice, you want to write more scripts, you want to do more business, you need to look at what's currently delivering and what do you have, and what is the gap to what you want to have. And then you need to think about who you are, how you need to grow as an individual, and what you need to do differently so that you can actually have what you want. And our identity iceberg talks about the results that we get. And it says that results come from the actions, the decisions, and the behaviors that we have. So think about your life. Where you are today is because of the actions, the decisions you made, and your behavior right now. So what does that get influenced by? Well, the skills, beliefs, and values and identity. The interesting thing is, I can work on my skill. I can grow that. I can build a new skill. I can go for training and do all those things. But sometimes beliefs and values and identity are much more difficult to change. But remember, if you want to get the results in your business, you have to have the right beliefs and value. You have to have that identity of a successful person. And then you need to make sure that it works in the environment that you have in your business, and how is that environment at your house or in your family or so on. So make sure that you have an environment that's positive, an environment that's influenced by physical environment, what it looks like and feels like, where you work, your office, the people in your environment, the people you associate with. Are they positive people? Are they negative people? Are they talking you down, or are they lifting you up? And then learning in that environment. Do people want to learn? Is that a culture of learning that will help you be a better person so that you can actually be the person you need to be to do what you need to do to get what you want? Okay, and then really important is this point of power. You can actually blame everybody in the world about the results that you're getting right now, and you might not be very happy with them. You might have lots of reasons and excuses, sorry to say, that those things are not happening. Or you could be in denial of something. There might be a blind spot that you need a mentor or somebody just to talk to you about and see if you thought of this or that. Where we want you to be, and is the powerful side, where you have ownership, you take accountability for your business, and you have the results that you need to run in your business. So being responsible, accountable, and taking ownership is the powerful side of this equation. But you can choose to be on either side. I would recommend that you avoid the people that are powerless, that blame everybody else. It's never them. They have all the excuses in the world why things didn't happen. And they perhaps in denial of what things they are doing and shouldn't be doing. So how do you future-proof your business? Will you have the answers, all the answers? Those answers are there, but the questions you need to ask is really important. So what are the key questions? Well, I've listed two. The first is, how well is your client acquisition system working for you? Think about client collaboration, and how does that work and impact the acquisition system that we have today? And then the second question is, how can I improve my client retention results? So if I can keep my clients for longer and they build their business and I can grow with them, isn't that an ideal place to be, the type of clients we want? But keeping your clients and not letting them be sold to by a competitor in the market is a really important aspect for business. So you want to have collaboration. And to understand that, I want to make sure that we understand what selling is. Because at the end of the day, we need to make the sale. We need to make sure that the business we achieve the budget that we've set for ourselves so we can pay the bills. And if we say that selling is professionally helping other people buy, it is a different approach to it. It's a different approach to collaboration. It is really about understanding that I need to listen to my customer. I need to understand his need. I need to really deeply understand what is going to solve that problem so that I can recommend a solution to him. Not try and sell something to him, but recommend a solution. What do policyholders want? I think they want an insurance agent who is their trusted advisor. I think they want collaborating, with their customers, with their policyholders to protect their assets. They want to make, and the policyholders really need you to be part of that team. And they want you to help them reach their financial goals. Be that individual for the business, protecting the assets of the business, just as important as individual financial goals. So what would you say if I said that 75% of policyholders today would switch insurers to get more personalized service? Well, that's interesting because that's 3/4 of the policyholders out there. And it talks about something about the type of service we're giving as in general in the insurance industry. So trust should be the foundation, I think, for that client-advisor relationship. When the clients trust an advisor with personalized service, they will share more details. And if you get more details, you're going to better understand their need and come up with a better solution that will build further trust. And I think it's time for a mindset shift. Let's do less selling and more working with our clients to really understand their needs and perhaps even land bigger contracts and more insurance. You need a growth mindset because client collaboration needs to be backed by technology. And in today's day and age, there are so many options for doing that and making sure that there's a great customer experience. Research shows that collaboration increases client satisfaction. And the clients who are happy will stay. Clients who regularly communicate with their insurance advisors are 74% more likely to recommend their advisors to others. Well, don't you like a referral business? Well, I think that's the easiest business to get. And it's also the biggest closure rate, I'm sure. But now, let's see how getting more customers and doing those things can impact our business. Because we know that most business owners want more customers. They want more revenue and grow the revenue. If the business doesn't grow, it's dying. The revenue needs to grow. But understand that revenue is not everything. They want their profit they make to grow. And all these things are results. So looking at our 5 ways formula, we say that everybody wants more customers. They want to grow their revenue and they grow their profit. And how do they do that? Well, firstly, they have to get more customers by getting better leads or more leads and then converting those leads into customers. Well, in our example, perhaps let's put some numbers to this. If we had 200 leads at 25% conversion rate, you're going to have 50 customers. We also know that customers buy, depends on the frequency. They also have different spending patterns. But if we can actually increase and grow the number of transactions, and currently there are 2, and we're going to spend 2,000 Rand per sale, we'll have a revenue of 200,000 Rand. Given that a 25% profit margin, we're going to deliver a 50,000 Rand profit in this business. But we know that through test and measure, we can actually change some of those results. And test and measure of collaboration is an important thing. So, are the clients happy with you? Are you doing checks and balances in your business? I think the important thing here, I want to go back to that slide, say that through collaboration, I believe you can actually grow the number of leads you get in your business. You can actually grow the conversion rate because you're going to get better types of leads, more focused in your target market. They will buy from you more often and they will grow their revenue. And you can grow your revenue at the end. So test and measure those things, understand what is impacting your business, but really understand truly that you need to build your team. Because at the end of the day, as the owner or the manager of the business, you are as good as your team. And your team will look after your customers. And the customers will make sure that the business thrives and survives if you treat them correctly. Once the business is making money, the owner or the manager is really also going to be very happy with that team, and we're going to make sure that we celebrate. Wanted to share these couple of notes with you. I think it was an awesome experience to talk to all of you. I want to thank you for the opportunity, but I also want to say if you want to connect with me, you're welcome to connect with me on my website and on social media. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Welcome back, Bat. That was very insightful. Just to hear stories about stories and learnings and lessons from other industries. It's so valuable, for us as insurers and underwriters and brokers to understand what we're dealing with out there. So we appreciate your time today and really enjoyed that session. Our next speaker is a regular. She's a very well-known person in this industry. we love to refer to her as Madam CEO, the CEO of the Insurance Institute of South Africa, the IISA, Thokozile Mashlangu. Now, I just want to say something about the IISA. I'm not sure if you know this, but they make their space available to us each month to transmit and record, if you want, the session. And we really appreciate the warm and friendly welcome we get every time we get here every month. And we appreciate being able to use the space. So Thokozile, please update us on the industry.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot believe it's the end of the year. It feels like it was only yesterday we were saying Happy New Year, Happy 2022. But we're back at the end of the year. It's been a busy year. If you feel like me, I'm tired. I am tired. In between work and trying to do me, trying to grow, I say, trying to be a mother, a teacher to the people, and having to do grade 4 exams. But I'm alive, I'm in one piece, and it's been a great year. It's been a great year, I say, despite all the challenging times that we have had. We hosted the in-person conference for the first time in 2 years, so that was really exciting, and it was great to connect with many of you guys. As you are aware, I know I'm beginning to sound like a parrot now. The Super Early Bird registration for AIE 2023 is open and closing on the 20th of December. So do take the opportunity and register to enjoy the Super Early registration rates. Conference gives us an opportunity to learn. It gives us an opportunity to enjoy content that is rich, that is packed and packaged in a way that is meaningful to you. So take up the opportunity to register and enjoy their early Super Early Bird registration. But what conference also does, it gives us an opportunity to connect and re-engage with each other. It gives us an opportunity to have meetings that would ordinarily take us perhaps 6 months or longer, but to have those meetings within 2 days, 3 days. So do take advantage of that. And then, of course, conference gives us the opportunity to just socialize, to just relax, to just connect, and some play golf, some enjoy just meeting people and attending the social events in the evenings. All of that is part of conference. It's all part of engaging, learning, networking, and reviving the relationships. With that, this year we hosted the member recognition event. I did share this at the last InsureTalk last month, but I just want to recognize Fulcrum for sponsoring that event. Thank you, Fulcrum, for making it possible, and thank you for investing in the professional development of professionals in the insurance industry. I also want to thank Marsh, who has sponsored prizes for the top academic achievers. Marsh, once more, thank you for recognizing the need to continuously develop one's skills, to realize that learning is actually a lifelong initiative. A big thank you to Marsh for that. I want to also thank all sponsors for the AIE 2022 conference. We appreciate you. The opportunities for sponsorship for the AIE 2023 is open. We have started engaging with a couple of companies for sponsorship, but if you are on the call and you work for an organization that should be sponsoring, please make contact with the office and take advantage of that. I also want to just say the great part of social platforms is that we are able to reach people instantly, and our reach on all our platforms has grown to over 30,000. That's something we celebrate, and that enables us to make sure that our sponsors have their presence to our database, they have the reach. So that's the platform that we utilize for members and for corporate partners. So with over 30,000 reach on our platforms, yet the membership of ISA is only at 2,600. I then call upon you one more time, as I have done right through the year, to say, if you are on the call and you are a professional in the industry and you are not an ISA member, what are you waiting for? Why are you not an ISA member? Being a professional member denotes the level of expertise and experience that you have. It sets you apart from the rest. It shows that you are an advocate for professional development, that you're an advocate for skills development. It also gives you the opportunity to just elevate your standing in the industry. It gives you access to an organization, us, that is focused on growing the knowledge base, and we are affiliated to international bodies like the Chartered Institute of London, the International Insurance Society, the Institute of Global Insurance Education. Those organizations enable us to make sure that we remain on par and that we are ascribed to international best practice, and we get content, research content that we share with our members and our corporate partners that help us to learn and grow. So why don't you take the opportunity and become a professional member that is accredited by IISA, a SAQA approved professional body? I look forward to reconnecting with each and every one of you as professional members. With that said, I wish all of you a beautiful time as you wind down and spend time with family during the holidays. Travel safe if you are traveling. Reconnect with family. Take time off. I'm going to do that. Take time off. Stop. Pack. And just enjoy time with family. Enjoy time with you. Remember to do you in the process of doing family. I see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Thokozile. It's always so wonderful to hear from you and to know that our industry is doing so well, and the work that you do at the IISA is immensely appreciated. So thank you for that message right here at the end of the year. On to our next speaker is also a regular individual that joins us every month. It's a very well-known person in our industry, Mr. Tony van Niekerk. He's the founder of Cover Magazine. Cover publications, I should say, rather. And we get him online every month to talk to us about what's happening in the media. So Tony's going to give us a media update of what to expect in the news and do a bit of a roundup of what's happened this past year. So thank you very much, Tony. We look forward to your update to the industry.
Thank you very much, Christelle. As always, it's great to be here. I want to kick off by just saying, and I don't know if everybody have noticed, but today is for the Americans Thanksgiving Day. And I thought I would just kick off with a little bit of my own Thanksgiving. Besides the normal, all the stuff that I'm grateful for, and Thanksgiving to everything that, all the privileges that we have, I also would like to just give thanks to the industry for their support during the year, the different companies, our audience, the readers, the people on InsureTalk, to all the guys at InsureTalk, Llewellyn and your team. Thank you very much. It is really, really a privilege to partner with you guys. Christelle, thank you for all your kind words during the year. It really is, it's lovely to engage and to, as I saw some of the comments on the comment section, this industry is about relationship, it's about sharing, and it's about people. And this is what InsureTalk is also all about. And therefore, I'm grateful to be able to share a little bit on InsureTalk myself. So thank you very much for that. Going on from there, just a little bit of an update on all the developments at Cover. It's been a really great year. Wonderful for us to be able to engage again, to be able to go to conferences again. As Thokozile said, the AIE conference was just so spectacular, and it was wonderful to connect in person with people. We've had so many events, and at the moment, all of these dinners going on, which is just, it's wonderful to be able to catch up with people in a live environment and just spend 3 minutes with a person to reconnect and to just see the face, look into their eyes and actually see, you still have connection with people. So absolutely brilliant. So thanks for that. I think one of the big things on our side is that we, as you guys might know, we formalized our relationship with the Learn-On platform. Learn-On became officially Cover Learning and part of the Cover business. And we've really been focusing on improving on the e-learning environment and providing the best updates for people, etc. So it's great to see so many companies. We've got quite a few international corporate brokerages. We've got insurance companies. And what they're doing is they're subscribing in bulk for all their staff to be able to pick and choose a certain number of courses that they can do to develop themselves. And as you know, Cover is all about sharing knowledge. And myself, I'm an information junkie. I just love sharing. Probably most of the time I share too much, but I just love sharing information and helping people to grow themselves, to develop, to have access to what they need to grow themselves in their businesses. And that's what we intend doing with Cover and with our e-learning platform, to make it accessible for everybody to up their skills. We then also completed our broker survey, and I'm excited that we will release the analysis very soon. We've had an event, a small event where we just shared this with a couple of brokers, etc., and discussed the results of the survey. Very, very interesting. A lot of it what we thought we would get, but also many other very interesting insights that will help us also to improve our contribution to the industry and how we share the knowledge of the industry with the various people. As somebody said, yeah, sharing is caring. Fred, thank you very much for that. Yeah, sharing is caring. And everybody in the industry are just so willing to share and assist us to get it through to the audience. So yeah, we're busy putting together an ebook on those results, and we will be sharing those results for everybody to see. We then also in January, late January, we will release our special leadership edition. We did the first one during COVID. And part of the reason for that was just to share a bit of optimism from the leaders in the industry and how they see us taking care of all the challenges that we face and assisting us to or leading us through all of these challenges. And again, this year in January, we'll have a whole bunch of CEOs and leaders in the industry sharing their experience, etc., and guiding us towards a prosperous year in 2023. And lastly, then we've got our January edition. We'll have our usual Outlook feature, very interesting issue to always look at, because we've got a whole bunch of people, not necessarily CEOs, but senior leaders in the industry, hands-on people sharing what they expect for the year and what is to come. So that's also going to be a great issue. We have just finalized our December issue. We're covering reinsurance and then a bit of marine insurance amongst the specialties. So have a look out for that. You can just pop into our website, cover.coza, and then go and download and read. As you know, our reading is free. There's no paywall. There's no subscription. All you need to do is just provide your details to download the magazine and read it. I believe that if we are sponsored and get advertisers, then we don't charge the reader. The advertisers pay for that. So thank you to the advertisers, and you can thank them on our behalf as well for making it possible to be able to do this. So on that basis, on this Thanksgiving Day, I thank every one of you. I thank all the stunning people in our country that are contributing to a better society, to uplifting everyone. We can all make a difference, no matter how small it is. You all know the starfish story. You can make a difference to one person. So however you do that and whatever you do over Christmas, over December, make sure that you do that. Smile at somebody, help somebody, make somebody feel better. That's the easiest thing to do. It costs nothing, and all you have to do is reach out, have some empathy, and provide your love and your care to people. So thank you for that. And yeah, I wish you a wonderful, safe, excellent, enjoyable family fun time. Thank you, and thanks to the InsureTalk guys. It's been a fantastic year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. It was really great to have you on our edition again this morning, and we thank you for your regular updates at each of the InsureTalk editions throughout the past couple of years. Now we're on to something really exciting. So right at the start of the InsureTalk programming, one of the things that the team decided to do was to feature local artists. It's something that makes this so unique, is that each week we have a different artist to look forward to. And it's really important that we understand how this works. These artists are featured because we want to give them a platform to showcase their talents. But we don't expect them to do it free of charge. They are paid, they are here to entertain you, and it's just wonderful to see the amazing talent we have in this country. And it brings me to our entertainment for today. I'm so excited to have her back. She was one of our very first performers during the dark days of lockdown in 2020. And I remember that day so well when Bianca Lagrange performed for us for the very first time. And she's back today to celebrate the end of this year. Now, all of us know her. She is one of our most well-known entertainers, but I just thought it would be good to give you a little bit of a background on Bianca again. So she was born into a musical family. She studied classical piano and violin and has always had a profound passion for music and the performing arts, and it shows in the way that she performs. You can see she just loves entertaining us. Even if you're born an entrepreneur oozing talent and training, all the brilliance and experience in the world is of little worth if nobody knows about it. Bianca's music career was formed around a lifelong focus on entertainment, including long-term and dedicated training. She works at this, and her work ethic is actually one of the things that we know about her, is how hard she works to be successful. But it was boosted by to a big time by the mixed blessings of reality TV. When she appeared on the talent search Idols in 2002, I remember it. It was so amazing. Idols was such a wonderful experience, especially in the early days. This saw the release of 4 albums and several of her own live TV shows, including Bianca and the Swing Sisters, Bianca Revealed, and the Now and Then show. So over to you, Bianca. We look forward to your entertainment today.
Usaputluka satibeka Usaputluka satibeka Usaputluka satibeka Usaputluka satibeka Ayo mama Ayo mama pata pata Ayo mama Ayo mama pata pata Usaputluka satibeka Usaputluka satibeka Usaputluka satibeka Usaputluka satibeka Ayo mama Ayo mama pata pata Ayo mama Ayo mama pata pata Come on, that's it. kutwane ikika lenglela kuba kuko kutwane ikika lenglela haya kuko kutwane sele kabale dikaba haya kuko kutwane sele kabale dikaba kuko kutwane usele kabale dikaba haya kuko kutwane usele kabale dikaba kuko kutwane. Taking you way back tonight.
Bianca, thank you so much. What a wonderful way to end this year with you here on InsureTalk. We really appreciate your participation and support over the years. Now back to business. We're not just here to have fun. Our next speaker is from SHA, another specialist from that team of specialists. We have Koketso Shabalala. He's the underwriting head of construction and single projects. And he's going to talk to us specifically on a topic about construction and a closer look at construction and single projects. So we're going to focus on the topic of construction and single projects, and we look forward to your talk, Koketso. Just a little bit of information on Koketso. So Koketso joined SHA in 2021, at the end of the year, December 2021, as the underwriting head of construction and single projects. He has experience in the insurance industry of about 13 years. After obtaining his BCom degree from the University of Johannesburg, he went on to occupy multiple roles within the insurance industry, including broking. I love it when I hear about underwriters who have got broking experience. And it doesn't matter if it's personal lines, commercial, or specialist lines. Understanding what brokers deal with when they sit in front of their clients, I think, is such an important aspect of being a well-rounded and good underwriter. So I'm very glad to see that Koketso also spent some time with our brokers. And it's ultimately led him to this area of specialization being construction and engineering. So Koketso, on that note, I'm going to hand over to you, and we look forward to your talk.
Good day, everyone. Geez, what a tough act to follow, literally. So I will be talking about construction and single projects. So on my slide, you'll see a picture, and just to explain the picture, it's a virtual reality headset.
Sorry, can you hear me? Could you just share your screen?
Oh, apologies. Can you see it now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So I've got a picture of virtual reality headsets. And I'll tell you a short story about why. So I have a daughter who's in grade 2. So one day she came home and she said, "Dad, at school today we had a VR headset session." I'm like, "Okay, my baby, what's a VR?" She's like, "No, virtual reality, Dad. And we learned about the planets." And she went in to explain the planets so vividly, and I was fascinated, and I was like, "Geez, what an amazing tool to have." Imagine if we as underwriters had virtual reality headsets to the risks, especially from a single projects and construction perspective. because we really underwrite the unknown. We put our faith in people and their skills and their expertise. And the inverse is also that clients put their faith in us as brokers and insurers. And they would also love, a set of virtual reality headsets that would show them how the policy would respond should they need us. So that's the background behind why I chose this picture. And if you all look under your chairs, no, I'm just kidding. There's nothing under your chairs. But so I'll open my presentation with the construction sector and the overall outlook. In my personal opinion, I feel like there's a positive outlook in the construction sector, and I'll tell you why. We have a multitude of challenges. We have infrastructure challenges. We have potholes on our roads. We have congestion. We have power challenges, and in that lies opportunity. And we see it in the numbers. The recent AfriMet construction index showed that the construction sector, or their contribution to the overall economy, grew from 2.4% to 4.1% in Q3. Another place where I see it is we have a lot of construction clients, and from a single projects and construction perspective, we look at estimates, estimated turnover. And there's been immense growth, which gives us the faith and hope that, the outlook is positive. Because if your clients are in the construction sector and they are anticipating that their portfolios or their turnover is going to grow by 20, 30, 40, 50%, that really gives you hope and faith that the economy and the construction sector will grow. And with that growth also comes opportunities not only for the large construction companies, but for smaller construction companies coming through. And I think we've really heard that the only way we can bridge or remedy the unemployment is through the growth and development of small to medium enterprises. So when these projects come out, the larger contractors will subcontract to smaller contractors, who in turn will create entrepreneurs, and they'll create employment for the semi-skilled and skilled laborers. So in respect of single project insurance, we generally have a number of policies in the industry. I mean, it's your CAR, your EAR, but I will be focusing on the liability aspect. So single project professional indemnity and single project public liability. I think, like, from a single project public liability perspective, the intent of the policy is to cover the insured or the project for any legal liability. So as a general rule of thumb, in respect of single project insurance, I view the project as the insured, and everybody that is a touch point is insured by virtue of doing the project. So the project is the ultimate insured. If there's a claim, we seek to make the project whole again. So as a consequence, we cover all the parties that will touch the project. From a single project professional indemnity perspective, all the professionals or anyone with a professional qualification. From a single project public liability perspective, we cover any third party damage, be it property damage, be it injury, as a result of the project. So, but to put it in simple terms, is that should anyone get damaged, I think we recently had a claim where the insured was pouring concrete, but by some accident there was a bunch of cars parked on the side of the road, and they managed to get concrete on all those cars. And needless to say, the owners of the cars were not the happiest bunch, so they came knocking. And so those are the kind of things we cover on that policy. And I think you'll see a lot in shopping malls, or built up areas where there's work being done and there's people walking up and down and around sites, people driving up and down. So from a single project public liability perspective, we cover those exposures where anyone who is not part of the project may get injured or may suffer property damage as a result of the works being undertaken. So a more complex cover is single project professional indemnity. So what this does is that it covers the design, supervision aspects of the project. So it'll cover the professionals. And I will just explain briefly the difference between an annual construction PI policy and a single project PI policy. The first thing is the period. So that the policy, the single project PI policy, will cover the project for the duration of the project. So it's not renewable year on year. So if the project is 36 months, the policy will cover it for the 36 months. So that gives the client peace of mind that they've actually got cover, and they do not run the immediate risk of losing that cover through the duration of the product. The terms and conditions will remain fixed through the duration of the product. And another element of the single project PI policy is that we have a defects liability period. So if the client, once the project is handed over, if the client feels like there are defects or they didn't get what they ordered, in essence, it's like buying online, what you get versus what you order. They would then claim against the contractor, well, against the policy if they feel like it's a design fault or the damage or the dissatisfaction stems from design during construction. And in this policy, we also give 3 years retro cover for conceptual design. So it's a very long policy. Policies will generally run up to a maximum of 10 years. But working outside of South Africa, we're seeing a trend where clients, or rather financiers and employers, are asking the contractor to take out single project public in professional indemnity policies for the duration of the contract plus 10 years past handover, which increases the duration of the project. However, in the most and ourselves, we would do it up to a maximum of 10 years, including construction, testing and maintenance, and the defects liability, or some refer to it as the extended reporting period. So who is covered under the policy? So as I mentioned earlier, we cover all parties of the project. So the project is our insured, and we cover everyone that lays hands on this project for any breach in professional duties. So professional duties will stem from professionals working on the project. So be it the engineer, the design engineers, supervising engineers. So I'll tell you, there's an interesting story where the design engineer and the supervising engineer were two different people, from two different companies rather, because generally, you won't have one engineer working on a project. So the supervising engineer, so the design engineer initially made mistakes in their design. It was a road, and it didn't cater sufficiently for the water that would flow through the road, so the drainage was insufficient. The supervising engineer looked at the diagrams, didn't understand the diagrams, but decided that, you know what, we'll figure it out as we go along. And of course, lo and behold, it rained, and the road cracked and collapsed because it couldn't handle the water, and the water wasn't being sufficiently drained. So when they asked the question, the supervising engineer was like, wait, the drawings were wrong, because the design engineer should have put 1, 2, 3 in place, and I saw this, but it wasn't in the diagram. But also, I didn't understand the diagram or the drawings and the plans that the design engineer had drafted. So how a single project policy would respond in this instance, I mean, you see that there's a lot of finger pointing in this instance where the design engineer says, no, the supervising engineer should have asked me what my intention was in my design, and I would have explained. And the supervising engineer is like, but your designs were wrong anyway. So what a single project policy would do is that we would assist in remedying the defect and reinstate without going after without calling at claim stage, without calling on the consultants or trying to assign blame and responsibility. The policy would respond in the best interest of the project. So we would reinstate and remedy the defects. So I think I've also gone into the professional disciplines that I covered. It would be civil engineers, structural engineers, architects, electrical engineers. So this is not exhaustive, but they would need a professional qualification. Sometimes you do get cover for supervision by experience, but that a lot goes into underwriting that and agreeing to that, and that's where you need your VR headsets. Consequential loss is excluded. So what I mean by consequential loss, I think if you know a CAR policy, you have a DSU section when there's a loss. So that's a delay in startup or advanced loss of profits. So those are not covered under the single project professional indemnity policy. So while the defect is being remedied, and any delays as a result of the remedying of the defects would not be, the financial aspect associated to that would not be covered by the policy. So a simple example is, let's say somebody's building a hotel, and then they find that. So we had an interesting case with a claim where they were building a very fancy building, but the core of the building was circular, and then they had to make cutouts of the lifts. So when Chandler came down from Germany and tried to install the lift, they're like, wait, these cutouts are not straight, and our lifts only travel in a straight line up and down. So of course the project manager said, but can't you just make your lift turn a little bit? And Chandler got back on the plane and they went back to Germany and they said, okay, please call us when you've made our cutout in a straight line. So if that was for a hotel, for instance, obviously hotels would have anticipated opening dates, and obviously they would have booked out rooms in advance. So that loss in income, that consequential loss in income, would not be covered under this policy. Another difference between the annual policy, this cover is not cancelable. So what we mean is an annual policy, if it comes to renewal, the insurer can say, okay, I don't want to write or insure this client anymore. On a single project professional indemnity policy, while the project is still going on, the cover remains in place at the terms and conditions agreed at inception. But this only changes when there's an extension. But if the period stays as is and the project is finished on time, this cover would stay in place. So the primary insurance clause prevents it from going into the consultant's policy. So the example I made earlier about the engineers, the design and the supervising engineer, it wouldn't affect their annual policies because the project's policy would respond. So in our annual risk review that we did for 2021, we found that the quantum of claims went down, but the number of claims went up in 2019 and 2020. And I think in 2021, and I think it could mainly be attributed to the slowdown in economy because of lockdowns. Hence, there weren't many projects that were going on. Even though you may argue that in terms of essential services and the construction sector, they went back to work earlier than other sectors. But that's the claims behavior we saw. But from a single project perspective, the claims tend to be large. And the reason that they're large is that generally when the defect is identified, it's at handover stage. So the project in essence has been completed. So unlike a CR policy where if a collapse happens halfway through, you only have, half the work and the salvage, that you can talk. But if there's a defect, if there's a material defect, as a result of design or failure to supervise, you generally find this out when the client takes ownership, and it's generally turnkey projects. So when they turn the key and they're like, well, no, this thing you gave me won't start. So you need to go back, get experts in, to come and assess the damage and the course of action, to remediate, what the client is claiming for. So that's why the quantum of claims tends to be generally high. And with the quantum and the limits being high on these policies, the deductibles are commensurately high as well. So from a state of the market perspective, we generally follow, as a market, international trends. And what we're seeing is, mainly from the London market, is that capacities are shrinking. And it makes sense, no one really wants to put 100% on a risk, because chances are, when there's a claim, you're going to be in, for the 100%, because your innocence may need to break down and then rebuild. So what we're seeing a trend is that clients are putting, insurers are putting in, lower capacities, 40%, 50%, 60%, depending on the size, of the project. And in the past, policies were being written on a each and every loss perspective. But now we're finding that, these covers are being placed on an aggregate basis. So if you have your limit, chances are that the limit would be the limit, for the entire project, which makes sense, because if it's a design flaw, you're generally anticipating that if it's handed over, you're expecting to have only one massive loss at the end of the day. So you're not expecting people, to design or supervise incorrectly over and over on one project. That would be concerning. And another reason for the cover being on an aggregate basis, we're seeing a lot of renewable energy projects, solar, wind. And what happens is that there's a lot of small elements that go into the whole product. Like if a solar farm, you'd need about, maybe, let's say, 3,000 solar panels and mechanisms and foundations. So if the design is flawed in one, chances are it will be repeated 3,000 times, on one project or one site, because you have 3,000 different elements. And we've seen that happen, in claims in the past, where, there was a pin that was, incorrectly specified. So when this pin was incorrectly specified, it was put in on all of the panels. And what happened was, this plant, the solar plant, was supposed to be, the solar panels were supposed to track the sun. But because the pin was incorrectly specified, they couldn't turn to track the sun. So what do you have to do? You have to redesign the pins. You have to pull every panel apart, and then take out the pins and then replace the pins. So you can imagine the amount of work, the amount of man hours, the procurement costs, that come into these sort of, claims. From a rating perspective, rates are increasing. Rates are increasing because the market has really taken a hiding, from single projects. Because I think it seems like I sound like a broken record, but the claims, when they hit, they really are big, and the complexity in projects is changing. I think, especially in our local landscape, we're finding a demand for, alternative power sources. So your wind, your solar, your concentrated solar plants. So these are very complex, and if there's a claim, it can be very expensive. So as a result, the market has changed the pricing, and obviously, when there's more demand than there is supply, it drives up prices. And And I think, lenders and financiers, they are really, they're playing a pivotal role in driving the type of insurance, the duration of projects, because they are, in essence, making an investment just like us. They are trusting professionals to get the job done. So they would like to know that at the end of the day, this project will be done to specification. It will generate the anticipated revenue so that um, the employer or the project owner can realize the returns that will help them pay back the lender. So we're seeing a lot of lenders clauses, driven towards or in the favor of the lenders should anything happen during construction, post construction, during the defects liability period. So back to my VR virtual reality goggles perspective. As underwriters, we really need to understand the risk. We need to see it as vividly as possible from our desks. But from a collaborative risk management approach, we are looking at going on site, seeing what's happening on site, and seeing it that the project has been and talking to the people and professionals on site to see that the project is on track, and there's no anticipated issues. It will be handed over as per the specification and agreement of the client. So proposal forms, help us understand the risk, but we also require supporting underwriting information, supporting these proposal forms, bill of quantities, the professionals involved in the project, be it engineers, be it architects, be it electrical engineers. We need to see, timelines, Gantt charts are very important. So you need to see that this project, the timing of the project has been catered for sufficiently to achieve the requirements and goals. Because what you'll find now is that, with the growth in infrastructure that we anticipate and the growth in projects, is that there may be tighter timelines. So projects they'll need to be delivered faster. So you find people working around the clock, and that's where mistakes can happen. So there can be mistakes in design, or there could be a mistake where it leads to third-party, damage, or injury, or even worse, death. And we'd like to, through the brokers, talk to the clients, and ask questions where we don't understand the risk, because that allows us to give, better cover at better prices, and the right cover, more importantly. So we really like talking to the clients, because no one will know the risk better than the client. We know insurance, the client knows their risk. I think I spoke to the collaborative risk management approach, where we would like to go on site and see the project and see how the project progresses. So that's how I anticipate our virtual reality goggles in the absence. I'm sure one day some smart person will invent virtual reality goggles for underwriters, and we'll be able to see a rendering of the risk. So I spoke to the client also needs to see vividly how the policy would respond when they claim at claim stage. So from a third party liability perspective, the policy provides cover for legal liability. So if anybody comes and claims against the project, or any party that is involved in the project, the policy would respond firstly by investigating. So we'll send out professionals to investigate. If it goes to court, the policy will cover defense. And then if there's an award, the policy will cover the award to the limit of liability of the policy. So that's how the policy would respond. Even in a professional indemnity scenario, the contractor or the professionals become the third parties once the project has been handed over. So if the client comes and claims against the contractor or the consultant and says that this project isn't doing what I anticipated it to do, so can you remedy this? And I feel like it stems from design, or supervision. Then the policy would respond and remediate the damage and make the client whole again. Even though it's a liability, a third party liability covers, but we do have an element of first party in the prior to handover stage. So prior to handover, if the designers or the supervisors can see that this project or this whatever they're making will not be delivered to spec because of either design or supervision or any breach of professional duty, they can call on the policy and say, we think that the policy needs to respond in respect of A, B, and C. We need to remedy this. And this, in essence, mitigates, the damage, because if they finish off the project and the client takes it over and then they're not happy with the product, then they'll return it and the cost will increase substantially. So the prior to handover phase is almost like a mitigant to the damage or the loss that we may suffer. So just closing remarks is that from a single project perspective, the insured, the ultimate insured is the project, and the intention is to make the project whole again by covering everyone that lays hands on the project from a professional perspective. So I would like to thank you all for listening to me, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.
Oh, and we're back. Okay, that was a fantastic talk. Thank you so much, Kuketso. We were really interested to hear what you had to say there. Now, I want to remind you that we are open for registrations for 2023 already. The team here at InsureTalk is very jacked up. So you can go in and register for all the events for next year. You earn 2.5 CPD points, and it's just the best way to deal with the situation of having to earn CPD points. So please go and register and join us. We are also grateful for our sponsors. I have mentioned before, but I have to say it again, Santam is our headline event sponsor for the day, and we are very grateful for them for their support of InsureTalk over the years. Of course, the team at SHA as well. You've been wonderful, and your speakers today have just been absolutely fantastic. So thank you again for joining us. Now, a big star of 2022 was Sasria. We experienced very interesting claims. We've all grown up with Sasria in the industry as our safety net, and that safety net got put to the test this year. So we have great appreciation and respect for our next speaker. Muzi Dlala has been on the show before, on InsureTalk before, but just a little bit of background. He is a multifaceted and highly driven strategic thinker. He possesses some unique skills that cut across the insurance value chain in both non-life and life. So he's got that perspective from both sides of the industry. Muzi is a risk management and climate specialist. He enjoys working in progressive and thought-leading environments that seeks to provide inclusive and collaborative solutions. So over to you. We are very excited about this next talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me the time to get to speak to your audience. Again, your very distinguished audience. A bit background, my name have already been introduced. I'd just like to spend a minute just to talk a little bit about Sasria, just to set the scene as to what it is that I'm going to be talking about. So I'll be talking more at a macroeconomic level about catastrophic risk management, the risk financing component of it, as well as the risk resilience part. So Sasria is known, I think, in the industry, particularly since the biggest swan event we had last year. But Sasria is currently, as part of our mandate, we do man-made risks. So, and that is limited at this current moment to, terrorism, to public unrest, which is pretty much the reason why last year we had to carry the bill for the biggest event that South Africa had seen. But our mandate actually is not limited to that. So we are required by our mandate to be a specialist in respect of investigating the risks that pose threat, particularly to the state. So risks that are extraordinary in nature that could lead to a situation where the entire fiscus could actually be at risk. So in doing that, leading me to my next slide, in doing that, then we then had to go back as Sastria to go back and really get to understand what are the shocks that the country at large at a sovereign level that we ought to be looking at as an entity, regardless of the mandate that we have currently in looking at man-made risks that are limited to public unrest as well as terrorism. So we actually find that there is a very big compound risk of the various effects that are happening in the country. Looking back at 2016, we know that drought, as an example, is not the one element of risks that we've had that has been extremely devastating. We can go back as 2006 when we had one of the biggest droughts that South Africa had ever had. But in doing so, we then had to go back and look at the contingent liability element of the fiscus on the budgeting process that the National Treasury goes through. What have been over the past couple of years the things that we need to be looking at as Sastria, even the parts where the private sector is actually involved in. But our job now as a Sastria is to also look at where are the gaps. Now, in doing that, what I'm showing you in front of you right now is a timeline that shows you exactly past 6 years only, and not only going far back. 2016, we had one of the biggest droughts South Africa had ever had in the history, where the actual total budget allocation that Treasury had to make to relieve was in excess of 8 billion rands. So, and at that particular time, there was also an additional reduction in capacity from international markets, as well as our local insurance companies that carry the risk of agricultural risks. And then obviously we do know that COVID-19 came the biggest in terms of size, where in terms of funding needed, there was an application of 500 billion rands that was sourced from international markets, by the state, and 260 billion of that, which is about 5.2% of GDP, was actually spent to relieve as part of those funds. Now, the reason why I'm showing all of these various parts here, including last year, social unrest, which resulted to just in excess of 50 billion rands in terms of economic impact. Although Sastria carried the bill up to about, we recorded about 37 billion rands estimates by the end of the financial year, which was March at the end of this year. So that was the part that was carried on by Sastria. But if you add all of these together, you get to see what the compound impact is of all of these shocks. And then we had the floods again in KZN, where the death toll, as you can see there, it went up as high as you can see there, to about 400 people that lost their lives. And the amounts that I'm showing here are the amounts that are relating to gaps. So everything that was not covered by the traditional insurance market, 5.6 billion rands of roads damage, 1.9 billion rands worth of housing where there was no insurance. And I don't have the exact figure, but there's an extremely high amount in terms of infrastructure damage that took place, particularly in KZN. And there were about 248 schools that were damaged as well, where there was no cover. So when you're looking at all of this, then it gets us to ask the question, is South Africa still resilient? And in terms of the view, there is an exercise that gets done on an annual basis that looks at the global resilience of a sovereign. So this gets grouped. So which then leads me to the next slide. So the next slide is quite an important one, because it looking at it from a world view, and then I'm going to bring it closer to Africa, and then I'm going to try and bring it as close to South Africa as we possibly can. And then I'm going to make a comparison just to see how resilient are we as a country in terms of what it is that we are exposed to as risk. So before I go there, there are three specific types of contingent liability risks that sit in the fiscal threat component of the budgeting process as part of National Treasury's budgeting process. So the first one, it starts from the climate that we have in South Africa. So we are a semi-arid country, so which pretty much means that we are half desert, we are semi-desert in a way. But at the same time, because we are close to the to the oceans, particularly the Pacific, the change in the air between the coastal areas and the air that comes from the sea, it results in the phenomenon of the two cycles of El Nino and La Nina. So which means that in as much as we are a semi-arid country, we are regarded as a heterogeneous country in a way, where you have extreme side of drought when you have El Nino, and then you are also exposed to the extreme side of excessive rain. So when there's a high level of precipitation within a particular space that is above the average that is expected in a normal cycle, when the two cycles are meeting in the middle, because that's pretty much where we should be sitting for South Africa to be able to thrive. So that is the measurement that gets used. Then it actually renders then South Africa in, we have a double whammy, as we like to call it, where at a particular point you would have extreme drought, and at a particular point you have extreme rain. And those two cycles, or the ends of the cycle, are starting to shift, meaning that the situation is getting worse, which means then that the level of resilience for the country is diminishing. Now, how do we then measure this, or how far are we in terms of comparison to the rest of the world? So as part of the economic risk management, so this is the study that I was talking about that gets done. So there are a couple of parts that they look at. So the first one, they look at the availability of money within the fiscus in respect of excess funding that could be able to be utilized for additional other requirements that the country might have. They also look at the monetary policy, of course, which drives the economics, but things like insurance penetration, financial market development, income inequality, all of those measured gets put together to determine what this is. But for the purposes of today, I'm going to bring us down to the natural catastrophe component, because as you can see there, we have a health resilience index as well as a mortality index. But for the purposes of today, we'll be looking at this. So this is divided into three parts. The first part is the American, where it's divided into two, North America and Latin America. And then you're looking at Asia Pacific. So the Asian part is also grouped between two, the advanced Asia and the emerging Asia. But we fall within what you see there on the left-hand side as the EMEA. So this is Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we are grouped together as part of the emerging EMEA. So what pretty much this means is that, so if you look at the numbers that are reflected here in relative terms, so these indicators are based onto some research that gets done into protection gaps. So they measure pretty much the relationship between what could potentially be the exposure, what could go wrong relative to the cover that is available. So the figures that you see here is 0 to 100 as a percentage. So it means the greater the percentage, the greater the protection then relative to the needs, and obviously the higher the resilience. So if you see there, other than the emerging APEC, we are sitting there under emerging EMEA, and the level of resilience as at 2020 is sitting at 8.6. And you can see it is deteriorating. So it means that for every 10 disasters that we have, for every 100 disasters that we have, we can only, or we have cover available only for 8.6 of those. And the fact that this number is reducing, it pretty much means that the level of disasters that South Africa is potentially going to be experiencing over the next couple of years, we are going to be experiencing a bigger gap. So which means then that one, we need to look at a framework that needs to be at the sovereign level, that needs to be able to cover these gaps and increase this. Because if you're looking at industrialized markets within the catastrophe resilient space, North America, for an example, sits at 40%, which is quite high, which is relatively good because the exposure is extremely high. You wouldn't expect to be able to cover everything, because I will show when we get to the last slide where we're looking at what can we do in order to balance between the prior event mechanisms, like an ex-ante event, as well as ex-post financing, which currently is what South Africa relies on. So I'm going to move on to the next slide then, just to show you over the past couple of years again, because we need to understand, as we said, that what are the risks? So under natural risks, I've already covered what the two extremes are, but we do in the middle as well have fire, because when it gets too dry, the temperature, it goes high, which then increases the potential for wildfires. So we do have that risk as well, which sits right in the middle. So when you look at these, there are three elements here. The first one is natural catastrophe risk, which cuts across the three areas that I've just covered. And then the second one is man-made risks. Again, as you can see here. So if you're looking at these bubbles, the size of the bubble, it pretty much explains the impact, the amount of disaster that is done by one particular event. And the more far it is to the right, the more rare the eventuality is. The more to the left, it means the more frequent then it is. So, and then the numbers that you see on the left-hand side are actually in US dollars, but I mean, you can extrapolate those back into rands just to get a picture. So as you can see there, July unrest last year, one of the biggest events we've had, but drought, in as much as it is smaller than this bubble that I have here, but the frequency is higher. So which pretty much means then if you compound all of that impact, you can actually get to see. In fact, because I do follow the climate, and we have had a 3 consecutive La Nina cycle, which pretty much explains why we've had such a lot of water damage because of that. And the expectation is that the next couple of years will be swinging into the opposite direction. So we might be experiencing some really extremely extreme droughts, which not only are going to be extreme droughts, but they might be for a longer period of time, which then makes us extremely vulnerable as a country. So moving on to the next slide. So this slide is just aimed, it gives the same information as I've just provided to you now, but at the same time, it gives you a perspective in respect of what are the gaps in respect of what has been covered in the past. And these figure that you see here on the left-hand side, the top left, it excludes the unrest and it excludes the impact of COVID in this. So as you can see here, 2.5 billion more or less talks to something to the effect of around, I mean, you can work that out, but it's in the billions because I think the exchange rate is around just about 17 rands per dollar. So the impact is that the level of cover that we have here relative to what the index says is still slightly higher in South Africa. So according to this, we are sitting at around, I'd say 16%. But that 16% in itself is not necessarily accurate because of one, we know that there has been a reduction in reinsurance capacity, and we do know that there has been some condition change in respect of underlying policies, in respect of floods, as an example. So the 16% that is shown here has significantly reduced, but I'm still of the view that it is still not as low as 8.6 as it is shown in the index. But the bottom line is that the gap is narrowing, and that is actually something that is worrisome. At the bottom right here, you will see the impact of unrest. So between 2017 and 2020, Sastra used to have what you would call attritional losses. So losses that are expected and are well within the budgeted loss ratio for an organization. And we've had quite a number of those for an extended period of time. until obviously last year, we had the biggest event in the history of the organization. So again, I'm illustrating the point in respect of the gaps as well as the level of resilience so that you can see. So if you look at this, for instance, it gives you a much closer picture. And again, what this tells us is that the one contingency that we have as a threat in South Africa, more than the others, because it is the one that has the least amount of cover, it is expected to be drought. So what you see here in let me start with 1990. Look at the amount of impact in 1990 that drought had in South Africa. And at that particular point, there was very little cover that was there in place. And look at 2017. And this, what shows here, it's only Cape Town. So this is exclusive of the devastation that took place for the rest of the country. Now, let me just take a moment to just show you here what really actually happened in Cape Town in 2017. So in terms of agriculture in particular, you have 4 levels of droughts. The first one, which is what everybody understands to be a drought, is a meteorological drought, which is the lack of precipitation. So when the rainfall is less than what is required in order to be able to give enough water to whatever crops are on the ground that we need in order to be able to secure food security. The second one is that once that happens, the next level of drought is the agricultural drought. So in as much as it might not rain, the moisture on the ground, the soil on the ground, it contains a certain level of moisture which could still be able to feed to sustain whatever crops that we have on the ground that would be able to then give rise to whatever commodities that we would export, that we would use to feed ourselves and all of that. But then when it gets extreme, that the longer the precipitation doesn't fall and the more degradation of the soil moisture, or the depletion rather of the moisture on the ground, then the next level is a hydrological drought, which is then when the rivers and dam levels go below a level that is acceptable in order to be able to sustain, first of all, the irrigated lands, as well as the availability of water. Then the last level of drought, which is pretty much what Cape Town saw, what we call day zero. What do you mean by day zero? Day zero means then that you now have a socioeconomic drought where the demand for water, basic need for individuals to live, is higher than the supply of available fresh water. And all of those are linked and they are interconnected. And I'm just trying to illustrate the impact that if we do not fix this as a country at this particular point, it's going to lead to extreme devastation. And that level of devastation, if it is not taken care of now in terms of finding means to transfer the risk, to share the risk, to plan for the risk, and do other investments now while we still have not reached the day zero in the entire country of South Africa. We've had it, experiences in Cape Town. And then this part is to show what the impact of resilience as well as cover gaps in relation to individuals themselves. Because remember, individuals are the ones who are buying insurance either for their businesses or for themselves. So 85% of adults, so people who are above the age of 18 years, 85% of adult South Africans do not buy insurance. And these are the reasons why they don't. Majority of them, we can just sum it up to affordability. So you can see here, majority of them citing affordability. And to support this, the slide on the right-hand side here, it is just to show you the reason why that is, because on the left-hand side, majority of South Africans are African. And in terms of average monthly income, and again, this is a numbers game. So meaning that when you combine the total number of those individuals and you work out the average, it gives you what you see here. So the reason why you have the picture on the left-hand side that 85% of adult South Africans do not buy insurance it is the reasons that have been given here. But if you analyze the affordability component of it, you can see that majority of South Africans actually really cannot afford that. And obviously that is something that the state needs to be looking at as well, because the purpose of this is to identify, first of all, where the gaps are. And secondly, in as much as those gaps are there, how resilient are we should really disaster strike? Now, the last part of gap, which would be counterintuitive when you think of it, is I got this statistic from the Prudential Authority. It's quite old, it's about 4 years old, but it's pretty much paints the picture in respect of potential gaps. And I've illustrated this particularly for the Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. In terms of cover or penetration of insurance, Gauteng, as the smallest province in South Africa, has the highest penetration in terms of insurance, particularly for disasters. Now, 53%, so more than half of insured property from all of those various classes of insurance you see on the right-hand side comes from this one province. And obviously that is disproportionate because KZN and Western Cape, Cape Town in particular, where I'm presenting from, have quite a number, particularly commercial property. So we do know that there is a significant disaster protection gap in respect of commercial property when it comes to those particular areas. And then I went as far as to just look at, because the biggest thing that we find, particularly at SASRIA, is that there is an increased number of unrest and that increase is largely related to, if we exclude political issues that we have, is largely related to service delivery. And we then want to go back and understand, in respect of service delivery, what are the specific reasons why municipalities fail? And then obviously there are issues of budget, there are issues of budget not being applied where they should be applied. There are issues of, I would say to a certain degree, lack of understanding how to manage risk. And that affects us as the insurance industry. As an example, if there is a fire and the particular municipality within an area is unable to dispatch fire engines to extinguish the fire, then it affects insurance, it affects individuals. So all of those things, and most of it comes to a point of there has to be a certain level of maintenance that is done. Secondly, the biggest one, one of the biggest ones, is that when there's a disaster and there is a huge protection gap in respect of replacement of equipment, replacement of services that are essential that need to be brought in. But obviously that is something that can actually be covered. I'll give you an example looking at, I've quoted here because this information is public information as well, that looking at the majority of the municipalities that are covered, as an example, the protection that is provided is capped per risk location. And an example that we are showing here is Mbombela as an example, the stadium in itself. The value is around 1.2 billion, but the protection gap exists of an excess of $1 billion. And this is not only this one example, but the bottom line is that the municipalities themselves, they do not have adequate asset registry in most instances. And as a result of that, they are unable to provide the accurate information in respect of what is it that they need to have covered. And the current insured value of 401 billion covering those assets and liabilities in itself, it is not stripped out to its various forms so that the risk can be understood better. And secondly, there is a suspicion from my perspective that the value is actually a whole lot higher, but the property that are being held and the properties that are being held, as well as the evaluation of those properties, as well as the understanding of how to structure those various covers from the municipality level, And then the last part is the affordability as well, affordability element. And then on the left-hand side, I've just used an example here of this information that shows Cape Town, as an example, having quite an initiative in respect of having additional cover that they're utilizing, which is managed pretty much using insurance principles. But this is an insurance fund that they have, which is actually reinsured as well to cover the gap in respect of the maximum loss limits that they have, just to ensure that they do obviously have sustainability. And the most important thing why it works so well is because the asset registry component of what they do is kept, I would say, quite well, because then it means you understand what it is that you have, you understand how much that is, and what it is that needs to be done in terms of risk management in order to reduce and mitigate against that risk. And then obviously they will follow some underwriting principles in respect of that. So this is just an example to show what other municipalities could come up with as solutions. But before we get to what it is that we believe should be a way to mitigate against the gap and to make South Africa a bit more resilient. And I'm going to cover this more at a, not only at a market level, but more at a sovereign level, just so that obviously this could be unpacked and brought back down. So this is the slide pretty much that is quite important. So the left-hand side of this slide where we're looking at, perhaps I shouldn't have called it base strategy, but this is the current model that is currently being used at the state. So in terms of cover, it could still cover the same amounts, but it is not very optimal because there are certain elements of it that are missing in respect of this. So the first one is comparing A and B, because B and C are pretty much similar strategies. So just comparing A and B. So if you look at the first part, that I'm very bad with colors, but the bottom part, that small slight cover that you have here. So that's a reserve fund that is being kept currently, which is around 91 million US dollars. You can work that back to South African rands. So in terms of return period, we look at what are the events that have a 1 in 2 year occurrence, 1 in 10 year, 1 in 15, 1 in 20, up to 1 in 100, until obviously 1 in 200 and even more. So those return periods in themselves, in fact, let me go to the next slide just to be able to show you that. So this is a South African average. So the average for South Africa is around 249 million US dollars. This is the average every year. So if you were to stabilize and normalize this, it would give you that. But obviously we know that other years are lower, other years are higher. But this is pretty much what it means. So the bottom part here, the color, which I technically don't know what color it is. I'm a bit colorblind, but what that means, it means that's the level of cover that South Africa has in terms of a reserve fund that could be able to take care of any eventuality of any contingency that could affect South Africa at this current moment. And then it actually gets to show you that it is only occurrences that are to be happening once in every 2 years that we'll be able to take care of as a country. And everything moving up this, you actually can see that they actually will be unable to be covered if there is no other alternative mechanism. So I'm going to use an example here on the 1 in 100 years. So 2 billion, $2 billion US dollars. I think if it's worked back, should be around just above 30 billion rands. So this the event that we had last year of the unrest of about 50, just over 50 billion economic impact. Obviously, it's way above 1 in 100 years, according to the simulation here. And in itself, if there was no SASRIA, the only relief that would have been able to be there would have been a relief to this amount, the 91 US dollars, as you can see here, which is part of the fund that I'm illustrating here, the reserve fund, which is aimed at covering those eventualities. And luckily, because there was a SASRIA in respect of social unrest, then SASRIA took care of the rest. there was still a gap, obviously, for those who were uninsured. But let's say if this was a drought, as an example, obviously the picture would have been different. So going back to this, so that I can close before I spend a lot of time, because I can get really excited about these type of things, is that, so if you compare now the strategy, so that's the allocation. And then the second part, which is quite a big chunk of it, comes from budget reallocation. So budget reallocation is a strategy that we use currently in South Africa, which in my view is not a very sustainable one, because budget reallocation, it means whenever there's a disaster, then the state would need to find other mechanisms, reallocate certain funds and reprioritize certain things so that they can be able to take those additional funds and then use them in order to be able to make that particular relief. But that is not a very sustainable model, because then what happens in years where you under-collect in terms of revenue and you have other pressing budget matters that you need to take care of, and then it ends up leading to a situation where there is no delivery in terms of what the state is supposed to deliver. So obviously, in terms of the reserve fund, it would make sense to increase that reserve fund from that figure, as an example. And this is work that actually has been done by the World Bank in respect of helping the National Treasury in looking at how to restructure this and what amounts would be more appropriate. And then the two other elements that would be included would be the contingent credit, of course. So it means then that it is only utilized as and when there's a disaster, but it's a prearranged agreement that is there that looks at these eventualities before they happen. So the idea is to try and move away from ex post financing, because it is extremely associated with delays, to moving back more into ex ante risk management mechanisms, which are aimed directly at that. And then the other one would be using insurance as a risk transfer mechanism, which is that blue line that you're seeing here. At least blue, I can see that one is light blue, to ensure that there is some type of a risk transfer mechanism. I'll give an example exactly of what we mean there as an example. So in terms of drought, as an example, we know that the private sector is unable to take care of that risk because it is highly systemic and it has not resulted in any retained earnings for the private insurance sector for the past 15, 20 years. We already know that. So as a result, there's a reduction. So the best way to do this in most industrialized and even developing countries is to create some type of a co-insurance pool where the resources of the private sector as the ones who used to take the risk within that space are still utilized. The distribution is used and everything else that is there to maximize the efficiencies, like early warning systems, registers, assessment protocols, underwriting protocols, as well as everything that they have in order to be able to manage that business is there. And then lastly, you then bring in the resources of the state rather than taking a fund, reserving a big fund out of that fiscus that is waiting for eventualities that might not happen or happen. Then you take a portion of that, you put it into that structure. Then that structure takes the risk to the amount, obviously, of whatever the contingent liability is expected to be at. And then the difference between that, then the state could utilize into other projects because of that element of opportunity cost that that money could be used to drive other initiatives for the state. So that's pretty much the picture that I wanted to paint to show that there is a resilience gap in terms of catastrophe risk, as well as at the same time, what are the gaps? And those gaps themselves, how can we take care of those gaps as a collective, not only as an insurance sector, but as a state as well. I hope this information will make you think as much as it does make me think. And thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so there we have it. Another session behind us, another year. And just like that, we're almost at the end of this edition of InsureTalk. We have one speaker left. And we're not just almost at the end of today's edition, but also almost at the end of the year. And we're all excited about taking a break, those of us who can. I am looking forward to a bit of a wind down towards the end of the year and getting back refreshed. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to our last speaker of the day. It's another specialist from SHA. It's Mr. Sizwe Kakwebe. Now, Sizwe joined SHA some time ago. He's an experienced cyber risk manager with a demonstrated history of working in the insurance industry, as well as within the consulting space. So once again, those insights, not just of being an underwriter, but from a different part of our business industry. He's skilled in data privacy, information security, and cyber security. And Sizwe is specifically going to talk to us on the topic of cyber. And it's such an important topic in the time we find ourselves. We heard last week that cyber is currently ranked one of the top 3 business risks faced around the world, according to the World Economic Forum. So we really can't talk enough about cyber. So Sizwe, we're very happy to have you as our final speaker of the day, of the year, and we look forward to your topic on cyber risk. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Christelle. Appreciate the wonderful introduction. I would just like to give thanks, first of all, to the InsureTalk for really inviting me to this platform to give this particular presentation. I would also like to just say good day to all the listeners that have joined this particular conference. So today I will be talking to you around cyber. As all these speakers before me have touched on or have kept true to the theme of risk management, so I will be following suit in a very similar direction. But I will also be touching on, some of the participants within the cyber insurance ecosystem, or really the value chain, and how those actual participants can really, add value within the cyber insurance landscape, and how they can improve that actual process to better the process around getting cyber insurance cover. So just to touch on cyber risk in terms of, some of the impacts within the South African shores. This is off the back of some of my conversations with clients as well as brokers, and I got the actual impression that cyber risk is believed to be something that's very foreign. That only happens with regards to first world countries, or the US or the UK, and recently with the Russia and as well as Ukraine cyber warfare. But I just wanted to just draw your attention today, to cyber risk has made its way to the South African shores. And in fact, South Africa is actually ranked within the top 5 countries that is mostly hacked. And South Africa has also been within the top 10 countries hacked, and consistently so for the last about 10 years or so. So some of these cyber risks that have impacted South Africa in the last couple of years, you'll note that CN&CO was hacked in about 2016. You'll also see that, from a more personal or individual perspective, there was an individual that was hacked that cost that particular person about 900,000, and that was done through his Gmail account. And I do assume that passwords were actually saved on his Gmail account, and once that account was hacked, the hacker was able to use those credentials to cipher money out of the bank accounts. You also note that quite a few government entities have been hacked in the last couple of years. Government entities are quite lucrative nowadays, especially from a data perspective. You also note that Liberty as well as ABSA, pretty much all the big banks have been hacked in the last couple of years. That is not a surprising stat there. You also see that Tracker has also been hacked in the last couple of years. Experian hack, as well as lately we also saw the Transnet as well as the TransUnion hack. And I do note that a couple of months ago, actually, one of the big retail companies, that is ShopRite, was also hacked. And yes, some of these cyber attacks, there is some kind of a reputational as well as a financial implication to a cyber attack. But I also just wanted to just draw your actual attention to the fact that, sometimes there is that human element or human tragedy that comes with a cyber attack, especially within the SME realm, where, if you look at your left-hand side there, there was this small boutique accounting company that was hacked, and data was actually exfiltrated from the company. And, accounting company that has no data cannot really operate. And as a consequence of that, the owner of that particular company actually took his life. So I just wanted to just draw your attention to, yes, there are financial and reputational consequences of a cyber attack, but for the more smaller to medium companies, there's a greater impact that is at play. So on this slide, I'm just illustrating to you how hackers do not discriminate, and how hackers are more than happy to, hack any company that has some kind of data, where they are able to sell off that data and get some kind of financial gain. And in the last 10 years or so, yes, they have been targeting, the bigger corporates, the financial institutions, but in the last 3 to 5 years, really, this has shifted to more, impacting other industries, and as well as sectors that are, not so lucrative. But if you are able to hack in and sell off that particular data, it is quite a money-making scheme, especially, with these recent cybercrime syndicates that have been making the rounds as well. So just to point out to you that, because in my chats with, brokers as well as clients, there is this perceived notion that, cyber attacks, I only operate a BAB and I will not be hacked. I have no data that a hacker will actually want to actually use. And funny enough, there's a example that I actually came across where a small boutique B&B was actually hacked, where they moved to an online platform where people are like actually able to book bedrooms and whatnot via a website, and a very smart hacker actually hacked into that particular website. And as you book a bedroom, there's a button that you click to make the actual payment. The hacker actually converted that actual button to, whenever a client clicks on it, they are not taken to the B&B's bank account, but they are diverted to another page where when they pay, the money actually goes into the hacker's bank account. So lo and behold, customers rocked up at this B&B only to find that, the owner of the B&B is as confused as they were, to find out that, they actually didn't book the actual room, and on the other side, the owner of this B&B did not receive any payment, and that, as you can imagine, caused a lot of havoc. So on a more insurance perspective here, I just wanted to really illustrate to you I just wanted to really illustrate to you what a typical cyber insurance policy actually covers, in terms of, some of the cover elements and costs that are actually involved in a cyber insurance policy. You'll note these 4 quadrants that are on the screen. From an own damage perspective, you will see that, that a cyber insurance policy typically covers the investigation as well as the response costs of a cyber breach, as well as the restoration costs. So restoration cost is just pretty much if, a company does adequate backups, you are able to put those backups back into the company's production systems. We actually have also found data on the dark web where we needed to actually sanitize that particular data and pretty much put it back into the company's production systems. I know that I'm saying all of this in a more layman terms, but it's a bit more technical than that. You will note also that cyber insurance policy does also cover loss of net profit, and that's from a BI perspective, as well as ransomware that is making the rounds lately. So that's the predominantly used attack method or vector is pretty much around the ransomware attack. You also note that theft of funds or cybercrime is also covered within a cyber policy. And staying on the first party cover elements within a cyber policy, you also see that reputational costs are actually covered within a cyber policy as well. From a third party liability perspective, that's the upper left hand quadrant. You'll see that legal costs and damages and settlements are covered within a cyber insurance policy. And from a regulatory perspective, the notification as well as monitoring costs are covered within the cyber policy. And just a note on the notification costs, for a typical bank that has about 15 million data subjects data, if you multiply that by $2, which is the average cost of a notification, you can pretty much figure out how much it costs to really do all the notification costs. Should a big bank or any other company really be hacked. You also see that legal costs as well as fines and penalties are really covered within a cyber insurance policy. And just to caveat that is to say that these fines and penalties will be paid only if it is allowed by law, which is very important. So some of the underwriting challenges, and I'm getting to a topic that is very contentious right now, especially with the long lead times when it comes to obtaining cyber insurance. So there's a couple of challenges from an insurer perspective that we have found that I would like to just highlight to you guys today, especially from an underwriting perspective. The quality of underwriting information I've seen over the last 12 to 18 months is quite problematic, really, because what I've found is that some of that information is really lacking, where a client or the actual insured does not adequately fill out the prop form, or they leave whole sections out, or they miss a couple of questions. That looks a little bit dubious to us, but anyway, so all of that does create, and it does lengthen the whole process of obtaining cyber insurance cover, especially also from a risk quality perspective, where this one is directly linked to, some of these cybersecurity control measures that should be in place. But sometimes if those clients don't have, basic cybersecurity controls in place, it makes it very hard for insurers to really onboard those particular clients. Then from a pace of change perspective, cyber equates to IT. IT is ever changing thing. It is progressing, every month, every year, and we need to really keep abreast of all of that change. I know that some brokers, you will see a lot of change within the cyber insurance realm, where there's quite a bit of sublimiting that is happening, as well as a lot of endorsements being placed on policies, and that just directly linked to all these cyber attacks that have been making the rounds worldwide. And subsequently to that, cyber policies are starting to change a little bit as well. Insurers are getting a bit more conservative under the hard market that we are seeing right now. I still foresee this hard market happening at least for the next year or year and a half or so. The pace of change with cyber is ever changing, so we need to really keep on top of that, and hence why you've seen all these particular changes when it comes to cyber policies. From a customer challenges perspective as well, I have noted all the queries as well as call them complaints around how onerous the whole cyber insurance journey can be, especially from a requirements perspective. But for me, I can directly link the onerous requirements really to the inadequate nature that cyber prop forms are actually being filled out, which is directly linked, of course, to the underwriting information that I spoke about previously, where if the quality of the underwriting submission is not up to par, it does lead to this perceived notion that the cyber insurance process is a little bit onerous. So from a coverage perspective, I will be touching on some of that a bit later on, as well as the risk awareness or unawareness, really. Yeah. From an onerous requirements perspective, yeah, it's a bit of a funny one for me, but what I've found within the cyber insurance space is that insurers, there's two methods in which insurers underwrite risks right now. The first method is there's a huge demand for information up front, and then the claims process at the back end, should a cyber incident occur, is fairly simple, right? And then the second method that I've seen within the cyber insurance space is that there's a low influx of information up front, or a low demand for information up front, but yet when it comes to claim stage, that is where things get a little bit tricky, and the insurer in that actual state would ask for far more information at the back end when there is an actual claim. So these two methods tend to contradict each other, and hence why brokers as well as clients will have this perceived notion that the underwriting process, or the insurers have this onerous requirement for information. From a coverage perspective, so I'm just trying to arm brokers, with a bit more information on how to really, call it, advise clients on, with regards to a cyber policy, and how to actually construct that policy for a client that operates in a particular industry. So examples here within the professional services industry, if you think of legal companies as well as accounting firms that have a high number of data or PII records, and in that particular instance, a cyber policy should be catered more towards your third-party cover elements, more so than your first-party cover elements. If you go across the screen to the manufacturing space, where there's a limited number of PII data or exposure to the data, but on the flip side, when it comes to a manufacturing or mining company, there's more exposure or more risk of that particular sector if there's some kind of halt in their activities. So the BI cover element, or some of the more first-party cover elements, become a bit more important there. And then if you move over to retail, where there's both a high number of data records, as well as if that particular company is rendered at a halt, there's a huge exposure there as well. So depending on or in where the actual insured sector or activities that they operate, it would also determine how a broker should really construct their cyber insurance policy. From a risk awareness or unawareness perspective, if you bear in mind the slide that I showed you earlier on, where it spoke about how hackers do not discriminate, we did report in our SHA annual risk review, especially from an SME perspective, that 64% of SMEs believe that they are not targets of cybercrime. So if you think of this particular perspective versus what I showed you earlier on, there's definitely a contradiction of views here, as well as, with some companies that view that their cybersecurity posture, at least 88% of those SMEs believe that their cybersecurity posture is actually quite adequate. Over the last 18 months or so, I've seen quite a few prop forms, from an SME perspective. It pretty much does contradict some of the views that I'm seeing on the screen now. And then from a broker confidence perspective, we've seen a steady increase in broker confidence over the last couple of years, as now we see that in 2019, broker confidence was at an all-time low of 26%, and currently in 20, or at least in 2021, broker confidence is at an all-time high of 64 or 65%. So which is very good. I think it really comes off the back of some of the training sessions that we've been having over the last 18 months or so. So kudos to all those brokers. Broker advice as well. There's been a steady decrease in the percentage of SMEs that have had no broker advice, and with regards to cyber. I think that's again off the back of the fact that there's increased confidence in brokers talking about the topic of cyber, and that has really led to brokers having a bit more of a reach into the cyber market, and that has also led to the fact that brokers are now giving more advice to their clients on the topic of cyber. Client investment in cyber insurance. There's been a steady increase from that perspective. Especially within the SME space. The bigger corporates, the bigger medium to corporate clients, it's understandable. They understand pretty much the risk around cyber and why the investment in like cyber is very important. So I am glad to see that some of the SMEs have also started to improve their cyber security posture, and that has led to them also taking out more cyber insurance cover. And that's also kudos to brokers as well that have had a bit more of a reach and confidence in them speaking around the cyber topic. So some risk management tips that I would just like to give you guys, as well as any clients that might be online as well, especially from a cybersecurity perspective. I would just like to draw your attention to, especially the first 2 points that deal with, increased cyber security awareness and training, as well as managing staff behavior. You'll note that, pretty much over 70% of cyber attacks that are happening worldwide are really a consequence of, the lack of cybersecurity awareness and training that companies give to their staff members. It's always around a phishing attack or someone clicking on the mail that they shouldn't be clicking on, and that has led to the increased nature of cybersecurity attacks. So just by the virtue of a company giving their staff members more or at least adequate cybersecurity awareness training and education, you can negate about 70% of cybersecurity attacks. Yeah, just wanted to point that out to you. So before I end off, I just wanted to give you guys a bit more of a simulation of how a typical ransomware attack actually happens. You'll note that it is, again, by virtue of someone clicking on a mail or attachment that they shouldn't be clicking on. So again, it's all centered around awareness and training. So before I actually end off, I'd just like to give you guys this demonstration of how a typical cyber attack actually happens. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, this is Nick Biasini from Cisco Talos, and I'm here today to walk through the recent Locky campaign that we saw. This particular campaign had a bunch of emails, one example of which is the scanned document email you can see here. It does have a PDF attached. When the user opens the PDF, there's a pop-up requesting them to open an additional Word document. You can see there is mention of both the Word document name in the PDF as well as the document itself. When the document does open, the user will need to enable macros, at which point the Xord macro is connecting to the compromised website, downloading the Locky installer, installing and encrypting files. You can see here on my desktop, I actually had a large amount of Word documents as well as PowerPoint presentations. And here in a second, you will actually see those files get encrypted. It doesn't take very long. Again, you can see the encrypted files as well as the HTML document outlining what the user needs to do. And here in a couple more seconds, you will see that homepage as well as an image pop up on the screen, as is typical with Locky infections. Thank you all for watching this video and look forward to more videos from Cisco Talos in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And that is my time.
Thank you, Sizwe. That was amazing. And I think it's a very sort of important and somber note to end this edition of InsureTalk on the risk of cyber. So we really appreciated your time today. Before you go, we've got a very short insert that you have to attend to, and it is a word from Carl Nolter. Carl is the founder of CN&CO. He always says he's an investor in people, and I can vouch for that. He invests in people. And together, this team behind InsureTalk and CN&CO do amazing things throughout our industry. So I'm going to hand over to Carl. Thank you very much.
Hello to all our InsureTalk friends and family, and it really feels like it is a family. After a couple of years of doing these series, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to every single person who attends, every partner who sponsors, the team behind the scenes, the presenters, everybody who ensures that the insurance industry continues to go from strength to strength with this, the largest online insurance conference around. Wish you all well as we hurtle towards the end of 2022 and look forward to seeing you in 2023. And I know that Llewellyn and some of our new and old sponsors have got some exciting plans lined up for us, including some hybrid events. Have a wonderful year end.
Okay, so there we have it. Another session behind us, another year almost behind us. And I wanted to end the session today just to talk a little bit about the professional organizations in our industry, the various institutes around the country. Tonight, we have the insurance industry dinner here in Cape Town. Very much looking forward to that. Last weekend, I actually did attend all these events and will be attending the dinner in KZN, and we've got the IIG dinner to look forward to in Johannesburg on the 1st of December, and many other events around the country. And I want to end today to say to all of you, to the leaders, so that you can enable your staff and support your local institutes. Make sure that we come together as an industry to network, to connect, because at the end of the day, we've been through an interesting time. And when I attended the KZN dinner on Saturday evening, I was just reminded about how important it is to see each other in person, and just to remember that we are here, an industry of people looking after people. So on that note, I hope you enjoy the year-end celebrations, and we look forward to seeing you back in February. Go and register and join us again as we work hard at continuous professional development here at InsureTalk. Thank you very much.